Well, hello. This is an interesting experience. Oh, I haven't taken my gum out. Excuse me. Of course, in true, perhaps Ramey fashion, or perhaps Alaska fashion, right when all the fun happens at 6:30, the water truck comes to deliver water. We've been out for the day, so thank you all for joining. And there might be some noises and some interruptions, and we'll just get there. If you have any questions, please use the group chat here on the, I'm not really sure what it is that you're looking at. If you're looking at the YouTube link, and if there's a chat in that, I'll find it, or chat through this the Google Plus site, or on Twitter at IRAMEY, and we'll try to get to the questions. Okay, welcome. Happy spring. I have a prepared introduction to kick things off, and then we'll just see how it goes. I haven't been able to actually fix the salmon because we were out of water, and I didn't have enough backup to make sure everything was clean. So we'll be making dinner up as we go along as well. But as all things as they should be, indeed, huh? Certainly this is a practice in walking the talk. Interesting how things reveal all on their own. So you'll have to forgive me. I don't read prepared scripts very well, and certainly I haven't always had the best of luck memorizing things. So I have just pulled up a text file, and I'm just gonna go ahead and read what I wrote, and I published it on the warmbeverage.wordpress.com blog that I've been maintaining the last few months. Oh, cheers. I should have done that first. As it so happens, I had to move on to the second bottle. Oops, that was the first. I had to move on to the second bottle because the first was corked. And so we're having my almost dinner with Ramey already on the second bottle before we begin. So I know I'll fall short of what I want to ultimately have achieved from tonight's efforts. And the only way I know how to deal with such expectations and to process the experience and whatever attachment there might be is to offer this process the best and most respectful parts of myself, to give it the best shot I've got. Tonight's performance is a part of that offering. This show is a tool to hopefully help me step close to, if not up into, my experience of being alive on this particular day, in these particular times, as this particular identity. Openly and vulnerable, I approach this event, this manufactured ceremony, with the same potentiality to which I already know I owe my life and my living. This effort and performance tonight is staged, at its core, to reflect the absurdity of this society and our communities today to be so inefficient as to reject rather than accept and better use someone such as myself, someone with such committed and passionate good as their legitimate and sincere aim. Many, many others are just as good, but I witness too many having to contort and manipulate their souls and their spirits in order to hopefully share maybe 50% of the heart and the integrity they have to genuinely offer us all. I get it, that necessary choice. I get the necessary choice. One must do what's necessary to feed the children. I get it. I was one of the children. But it's bullshit at the same time. How ridiculous this society can't better use people like me, that I have to resort to staging such absurd events as this one-man circus in the upstairs of my own home that I built with my own two hands, and to make a plea for my skills and my heart to be better taken advantage of. Shame on us all for this waste. Shame on us all who know better. Tonight is my ceremony to acknowledge and to alert and to invite you to not be as accepting or willfully blind to your own truth and knowing of just, good, legitimate, integrous, There might be some things shared tonight which will cause discomfort. Whatever discomfort one might feel, please consider on what you honestly want to reflect on as the root cause, or who or what you want to blame or fault for that dis-ease or that discomfort. This is an intensely uncomfortable event and experience for me too.
Hello.
If I felt there was a better option, I would have been happy to commit the calories and resources invested here towards that. However, I obviously haven't felt those options were legitimately available to me. Tonight, you will learn from me why I think this has been the way it has. I am responsible for not having better, faster solved how to better be understood and used, if you will. So my efforts now are exclusively intended to support what I have forever understood to be my task. I realized I had thought there were some of you who knew me better, that there were at least a few of you who knew me in somewhat a respective and or reflective way to how I know myself. My story, my adventures, my health, my motivations and intentions. In recent years, however, and especially this last year or so, I have learned that this wasn't the case. In these last 3 to 12 months, I've determined that I'm not at all okay with that. Everything here tonight is real. It may be a bit contrived and staged, of course, but it's real, authentic, and it's sincere. I will make every effort not to expose the identities or the private information of anyone else, in hopes of offering what protection I can for them. But some identities might be easy to connect. As we begin this experiment, I want to make very clear this setting is in no way intended to make commentary on anyone else but me. At no point will it be my intention to call anyone out. That said, this is about accountability, and I will acknowledge relationships and connections. I will acknowledge accountability as I see it, and I expect to be responsible for everything which I am responsible. This is my time. I am clearly saying that I don't have being reflected back to me a fair or legitimate or acceptable understanding of Ramey. And I'm offering this strange event as an effort to do something about that. It is a waste, and it is absurdly inefficient to use something like tonight to cast judgment, shoot arrows, or throw stones. This is my story, from my perspective, and based on my experiences I have had. Use this time to soak as much of that in as you may. There's no weapon I have which can really injure or hurt you. None more than encouraging you to make your own heart, mind, and soul available to yourself, to be present, to share with the rest of us. I have shorted you of me, obviously. This dinner is a contrived effort to try to collapse what seems to have been turned into many Rameys, into this one human being that I know. I've learned what many of you have taught me, and I obviously need to introduce you to the Ramey I have come to know. Tonight is for me. Tonight is for me to share on my terms. I have been too quiet and too patient and too considerate up until now. My dinner with Ramey should be considered for me as a fulcrum event. The broader themes and reasons which have brought me to this dinner tonight, on the first day of spring of 2014, 42 days post my 42nd birthday, at a time where my experience of body, spirit, and mind are as fluid and unstable as I have ever experienced. My knowings are as real and significant as anything else you know to be true and right. I have deferred my own story and my own needs and offerings too much, and this dinner is my giving notice. Henceforth, you should expect me to be present, to represent, and to represent what I know to be true and right. And I will henceforth expect you to be actively accountable for what you say and represent is your true and right. Are you ready? I sure as hell am. To all things beautiful. And now let's get started. I had another camera set up, a GoPro. If you saw the tweets earlier, I have a GoPro on top of a mannequin, and I didn't get that turned on. And I'm going to do that really quick.
Want me to go grab the other camera?
Oh, that'd be awesome. Hi.
Yeah. I wasn't sure.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I had locked that door.
I'm not sure who's up here. Oh, I want to introduce you to one of the dinner companions here. I just want to acknowledge any elephant that might be in here. So there's one of them. Couldn't help it. Why this? There's something about the need to represent a performance of real life, and I'm not talking about reality shows, but the need to organize one's experience in some kind of narrative, in some kind of story. And that's been something that I have understood, I feel like, at an intimate scale for a long time. Sometimes it's more that you feel you're the character in the story being written, and so you often feel like you have the illusion of control, and yet you know that the whim of the author's pen is yet what's going to take control. I didn't plan to grow up and not have a ceremony, a rites of passage, an event to mark a period of time where I knew that I was from one thing and into another. And as we weave tonight, we'll experience and explore some of those stories of why I think that's the case. But I've had to give legacy a lot of very intimate consideration, and my health has not been the strongest this last year and a bit, and the desire, the pull to want to know that there's something of you that lives, that continues on. Not knowing how to share that, how to experience that. And I've been very clumsy in my efforts to try to engage people in a number of different ways. Some of you, if you've followed my Twitter feed or have been in touch, you know some of those efforts. But it's really something that I needed to do for myself, a ceremony, an acknowledgement that I was no longer going to allow or accept a larger public recognition of what I've known to have achieved. Why 42? Why anything? Why was I born in Boulder? 42 is a good number. It's fairly significant through story and sport and philosophy. It's the answer to the ultimate question, life, universe, and everything, right? 42 days playing with that and working with the labyrinth and the patterns and kind of working backward within my own experience of my own health and my body. And if you can imagine the pattern of a labyrinth and you walk the one path in and the one path back out, if you consider that what often people associate is a practice of mindfulness, if you consider that practice then moving backwards within your own body from, say, the surface into your core, or if you have a certain pain or anything, kind of walking into that experience and then kind of walking back through it. Because 42 is the number that it is, and the seasons the way they played out, and February 7th was my birthday this year on a Friday, and it's 42 days before Easter, and I just like the play of numbers and the play of patterns. I think it was the early mid-90s when I first came across My Dinner with Andre. And I think it resonated something for me. very intimately in how a story can be told and can be processed. And I wasn't thinking of it as a stage for myself, a performance for myself, but more how I was experiencing my own reality at the time, how I was observing, as I was sitting in the audience, observing the theater of my life, of what was happening, of the way my body was moving through space, the way people were interacting with me, the things I was saying, the things that I was doing. It was often more that I was engaged in observing or having dinner with myself, kind of stunned and fascinated with the conversation of this other person sitting at the table, and yet so drawn and so intimately attached to the truth of what was being said. So with the numbers as they played out, and my obvious need, my pull, my draw for story, for connecting parts of myself to the different connections and relationships and people that I've known and touched over the years, I needed to have a graduation ceremony of sorts. And this stage here, this playing with the technology of having dinner with a computer and a few, little talisman and a bottle of, like, I mean, come on. A bottle of Ramey, right?
Right.
I mean, shit. And I've had a friend sit down here, so I'll introduce maybe, or would you like? Okay, we'll get there. All right, cool. Thank you for joining. I struggle with the fourth wall, and I don't know anything about theater, but I feel like there's an extra layer for me to observe and negotiate before I engage with the world that sees me. So here on this property that I've called my home since October of '97, and in this state, and this play of having some live people here, but having dinner with a computer with my back to I mean, it is so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And so I needed to play with it. I needed to stage this. It boggles my mind why the mentors that I've had have been so stubborn to realize just how efficiently I've learned from them. I feel like I've milked their wisdom, and then they look at me and say, "Oh, I don't know what to do." Well, it's not good enough. I can't pass judgment on them. I don't know them. But I know me, and I know it's not good enough for me. I haven't done a good enough job to share the full experience that I've had. And I need to do that in a fuller way with myself, and I need to do that in a fuller way with whoever else will listen. That's as simple as it is, however many that may be. So I want to introduce you, but I'm going to do it through this because it's a nice, there's a nice thing here, and thank you for joining. Would you like some?
I would love some wine.
Some wine.
Yes, please.
And
Pioneer Ramey here.
yeah, the first bottle is corked. It's like the first bottle I've ever actually owned myself that was corked, and that was the '06 Ramey. I've given them a chance, like on Twitter, to acknowledge it, but they haven't yet. So
yeah.
We'll see. Here's to Ramey Wines, and see if they.
There you go.
See if they care about a corked bottle.
Cheers. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. Okay. Just.
Yeah.
So it's ceremony, and then I'm going to introduce Elliot. I didn't participate in any of my graduations. And high school, undergrad, graduate. And it wasn't that big of a deal. The day of my undergrad degree, we sat, is it Moose Pass? Between Seward and Portage.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, the little so Karen and I, my mom and I sat and had a beer and toasted on that Saturday of I think they were at 100 degrees and they were miserable, and I wouldn't have wanted to sit for the thing anyway, you know. But it's not that I regret any of those decisions, but what it has is it's left me without any. I mean, my master's, my undergrad, I had 13 disciplines, and I didn't have a home discipline. I didn't get to know anybody in a departmental kind of context. My master's, 8, 9 disciplines, same kind of thing. There was no home discipline. Had to shift. My chair retired, so he could stay on the committee, but couldn't be the chair anymore. So I had to shift departments again, and then that chair retired, like just as I finished, and. But there was no, it was just kind of like it ended, you know. My high school graduation, because of an injury I suffered, I'm sure that's going to come up, at 15, I missed a couple years here and there in high school. And so ultimately I finished during the winter semester and didn't get my diploma until the next June. And the vice principal of my high school it was funny. She had once been kind of a fan, actually, and I don't have a good piece of paper here, but she had, I can't believe I don't have a good piece of paper here. She had the diploma in an envelope, and she threw it as I walked into her office. She tossed it, flink, and I caught it against my chest. And then I walked out through the side door by the music room at Boulder High, and I just went, done. Fuck. What it took me to get through your bullshit high school? Fucking A. Are you kidding me? My God. Thank God I had the threat of a lawsuit over you. Jeez. Because otherwise you wouldn't have put up with it. You wouldn't have put up with it. And I don't know why Boulder High School had to complicate things the way they did. Just, it's see, one of the things with a closed head injury is that you don't have any physical, you don't have anything broken, you don't have any cast. So if you take a shower and you put on clothes that look normal, they may have experienced you at one capacity at one time, but then they just simply can't believe. And it's not that they're bad people. They're not at all bad people. It's just really hard when you've got 1,200 students and they're all trying to cut classes, and then you have me. Come on, you're just going to run out of patience and understand it. I get it, but at the same time, it doesn't excuse you. It doesn't change the accountability. So I learned these things without getting any kind of like, hey, you learned that, good job. And I just kind of brushed it off. I just kind of moved forward. Why wouldn't I? I mean, shit. When my mom went into labor with me, she worked all day Friday, and she went in to talk about getting maternity leave because I was due Monday. And they say, well, when are you due? She said, Monday. I said, well, you can't take maternity leave now. Like, you're supposed to be taking it. She said, well, my dad wasn't in good shape on Sunday night. My mom goes into labor 9:30, 10 o'clock on Sunday night. Dad disconnects the car. She finally gets to the hospital. I'm born at 2:32 on Monday morning on my due date. She stays in the hospital and goes through a different procedure that night. Wednesday morning, she's back at work first thing.
Wow.
Hardy stock. And I've seen, that's what I grew up with. That was my perspective. That was what the expectation was. So the immaturity of the staff and many teachers in high school and in university was an easy thing to kind of blow off. I was lucky to be smart. I was lucky to have the genes that I did, so I could test well. And I'm a good student, and I care to be a good student. I honor my teachers. So I eventually decided that there was still, I don't know, it's the idealism of your 20s, right? I mean, I had already survived things that a lot of people didn't. So what else was I going to do? You know, like all of a sudden develop a crutch, you know? All of a sudden blame something. It was an incredibly inefficient thing. I mean, I saw all these people blaming things. I saw the staff blaming their incapacity to understand the needs of a student who had survived a severe brain injury and a relapse, that they couldn't feel comfortable enough in their own skin, in their own identity, and their own ability to detect bullshit from right and wrong. And so individuals who chose the structure and the systems over insane implications for the life of another human being. You know, when I was kicked in the head playing ultimate frisbee in a gym class, the coach of the class, he was the head basketball coach, and it just so happened I was at a summer scouting camp with him and some other students that summer before, and it was at Duke University, and I had avoided some of the hazing stuff that went on, so I outsmarted them, so I outclimbed them, you know, and yeah, I was scared. Yeah, I ran to the student center at Duke and called my mom on the payphone and cried. Yeah, it was intimidating as hell. And was I relieved when my knee blew? Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was totally out of my element. Because as I sat down, I was told, kid, you got a problem with authority. And I said, coach me. Coach me. I don't have a problem with authority, but don't bully me. I have talent. I have skill. You want me here. So teach me, coach me. But I don't see how enduring being punished and intimidated by older basketball players has anything to do with how well I can play. So screw you. So his punishment, I guess, was that I had to toughen up. And when I was a few seconds unconscious on the field, it was an automatic as far as he was concerned. Didn't matter what was said on the in case of emergency on the walls. Didn't matter whatever coaching experience that he had had previously. I get it. I've forgiven him long ago. Doesn't mean he's not accountable. Whoever he touched and however successful he was afterwards, because he went back to coaching at another high school. He was forced to resign from Boulder High, but I think it was another year later that he was at a Metro Denver high school coaching again, and I think he had a good career there, and he's retired now. I was asked if I thought I'd ever contact him again, and I gave that some consideration a few months ago. I think I gave it some consideration because it's that thing of ceremony, that aspect of ritual. Because in a way I didn't get to acknowledge that part of my blood either. I came from a basketball family. I came from athletes. My dad actually was a synchronized swimmer. Got a scholarship to the University of Colorado. Crazy. I have to experience something, and I don't know where in my blood, in my ancestry, to connect with, to acknowledge some passing for me. And so I'm just saying tonight's it. It seemed a good idea. I just want to throw in another. There's another elephant in the room. I just want to acknowledge him.
Should we set another chair here?
You think? Yeah, I didn't expect. Good evening.
Hey, Ramey, good to be here.
There's another stool.
Is there another wine glass? I just brought a cup.
Yeah, check the table against the wall over there.
Okay,
and Elliot,
Yes.
in that room there, behind the desk, there's a stool.
And the wine glasses are in this room here?
And yeah, check against that far wall over there.
Let's see the wine glass.
Rolling with it.
Good Lord, it's fine wine.
I feel that I owe a debt to those who have. This one's corked, sir. So grab that one. There you go.
Thank you.
Did I mention that this bottle of Ramey was corked? Did I?
It looked, no.
It's yeah.
Right, yeah. That's good.
I think there's something about karma. I think there's something about that ceremony. I don't. So from that field in November of 1987, I got back up and complained of a headache. And I remember there was some issue going on in one of my classes with another student, and I ran into him in the hall, and my sister was going to pick me up. Final cuts for the team were that night. And I remember the crookedness, the jarring tension that was there, and so my sister Debbie picked me up, and I think it was almost an entire bottle of Advil that I took before I made it back to class that night, or back to practice that night. And I went through the stretches and layup. Drill is always the first that you do, and I remember starting it, but I didn't. Then I remember coming to in the locker room, and they had smelling salts, and I remembered my name, but I didn't remember anything else. And I do remember like looking over and seeing the light on in the, you know how they have at the end of the locker room, they have the coach's office and the door and the big window. I remember seeing the light on in the window and the door was open, and they must have been calling my mom. And then they had another player bring me out into the parking lot and just leave me there. The next day I went back to school, made it to third hour, and I had a composition teacher that really was a saint. Evelyn Baird, she's passed on, but an absolutely beautiful soul. She said, "Kid, you don't look right. You don't look right at all." So went to the nurse's office, and my mom came back in to pick me up, and we went right to the doctor, to a doctor, because of course the way the insurance plans work. Dude looked at my eyes, called my mom in, and then yelled at her for putting pressure on me as a teenager to succeed and stuff. Like, what? So we made it a few more weeks. I don't remember any of that. I remember being in Children's Hospital and being there to meet a neurologist who was sitting in for someone that was on sabbatical there. And I looked for her for over 20 years. I just got back in touch with her 2 weeks ago. So yeah, pretty cool. So the story is like intimately different now. You know, because it had been weeks, the Thanksgiving holiday came, and because it happened at school, because education was so important to my mom, no one had ever gone to university in my family. We chose not to do a lawsuit, and the school said they would do whatever they could to help me get into university. So my neurologist, Dr. Ellison, she said, well, then I advise that you keep him out of all therapies. I advise that we don't run any tests. I advise that you don't have him exposed to the brain injury reality at all. This is the neurologist at Children's Hospital. I'd had a few other health things earlier in my life, which those stories might come up as well. So it wasn't an impossible thing to understand, in a way. I understand how some parents could say, what, are you nuts? Like, my kid needs therapy, and they've got to pay, and, but that's just not my mom. So Dr. Ellison said, encourage him, give him things to be inspired by. When he shows interest in something, direct it, feed it. And if he goes on to something else, doesn't matter, feed that, go on to that, encourage that. Because there was her feeling at the time that the more that you engage someone, regardless of what their ability, regardless of their illness or injury, regardless of the severity of their, say, stroke or their brain injury, their best chance is to encourage what the body knows what it does. And what it does is it rewires itself. It figures out ways to figure out ways. And if my expectation was to be disabled, then I would have become more disabled. I'm not saying therapy for everyone is bad. I don't know. But I do know my experience. And my experience was that throwing me in the deep end with having no idea about what water was or how to swim was the perfect thing for me. That in a way, every day, every moment, every time I had to push into my pocket to pull out a note to say, if you find yourself in a parking lot, go here. If you find yourself here, go here. Now, it would happen all the time. All the time. Some of you who are watching, how many times did I disappear places? How often was I always the last one awake and the first one up? I wouldn't sleep for weeks, and then I'd punch out 4 hours one weekend, or sometimes I'd collapse for 40 hours one weekend, and then I'd go again, just non-stop. Because it was like that consumption of ritual of every moment, of every shredded experience of moving through life, like driving an AT-AT, in Empire Strikes Back, like this big unwielding thing, through this white landscape. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, right? Come on, shit. I'm a tall white guy.
Yeah. Right.
We didn't have money. We had a great house. We had a beautiful house. We had a beautiful place. But my mom sacrificed fucking everything. She sacrificed my brother and sister not knowing her, so that she could provide some stability. Because she knew that moving around was disastrous for kids. That if you didn't provide that anchor of some kind, that base for a child to grow up in, to have some connection of security, to have a base from which they can begin to build their identity, their independence. She would have never articulated it that way, but she knew for herself. She made the decisions for herself as best she could. So I was always okay not having any big ceremony. It's like my dad. I've never given, I don't care. You know, like I get it. Like he was just a dude, like so many dudes who get with another woman and have another kid and is totally in over your head and goes, oh shit. And so then you freak out and you do something else. It's not like it's a new thing, you know. It's an easy story to witness. Certainly there's no lack of it in anywhere else in my family. So it never felt like it had anything to do with me. It was his story he was playing out. That's a little noisy, please. Thank you. So I'm packing a little bit more in before I bring it around to ceremony, Elliot, because now with another guest here, we'll see where it goes, and I don't want this to, well, we'll just see where it goes. But I'm packing a little bit more into the ceremony because when I met you, when you were introduced to me in your life, and I guess I'm not sure how we're going to spin this. If we should like poke in and say hello. Oh yeah, that other.
Maybe we can move around at the appropriate time.
Yeah. Well, so come on over here, Elliot, if you'd like to.
Sure.
This is Elliot. Why, hello. This is not a split screen. We're not like screwing with you. Like this is not a mirror.
Yeah. Right.
Hi, we're two tall white guys.
You need the same color shirt.
Cheers, Ramey.
Hi.
There you go, the cheers again.
Delicious wine,
Huh.
by the way.
Hey,
Yeah.
cheers.
Great meeting.
Hey. And we'll introduce RJ here a little bit later.
Sure. Go ahead.
I guess I thought through all of the experiencing of all the little moments that somehow, you know, the tortoise and the hare, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that they're slow and steady instead of that rash crazy, you know. And I'd grown up. I mean, I was my brother and sister were 11, 12 years older than I, so I got to learn from their kind of, woo, we're teenagers, you know. And drugs and alcohol and violence and it just never felt like it was like something I needed to do to prove anything, you know. And in fact, it seemed a lot more obvious or interesting to kind of to rebel with never having rebelled, to rebel by paying attention to all the rules. Because if you get good grades and you test really high, I mean, what are they really going to do to you? If you do everything the student code of conduct says to do, if the university president holds up the catalog of the university and says, to you, this is your contract with the university. You hold us to these things and we hold you to these things. Now, if he was meaning, if you declare your major at a certain time, then we have to provide the classes within a 4-year window for you to be able to take that, right? I mean, he was, because the University of Northern Colorado had a little bit of a problem with some of that kind of stuff, as UAF has at times. But he didn't specify, and he was the president of the university, so I don't want to doubt, I mean, come on, he's the president of the university, I'm not going to disrespect the dude. And at the beginning of the catalog for the university, was the mission statement and the goals and the values. And I mean, what's a contract, right? I mean, a contract is I agree to this, especially if I'm paying you, and then you agree to it too. Mm-hmm. So when they didn't honor what they said they were going to do, I just simply reminded them that they needed to respect their own mission statement, that they needed to provide me the education that they said they were going to provide me. All these little bits of ways that I wrinkled the system at those times, they were all real great little moments of ceremony, but then it was kind of incomplete. So instead of like the rabbit, getting my degree, woohoo! You know, I can kick back now and kind of chill out, and then run and kick back. The way I saw it was, I got to be really sure every step I'm taking, because one, I'm just the AT-AT driver. Like, I'm sitting in the audience watching this thing happen that everybody is calling Ramey, that everybody is engaging with Ramey, but how I'm controlling it is not always 100%. You know, like it's hard to get it to do everything that I need and want it to do, to say, to represent, to look. You know. But son of a bitch, no ceremony ever happened. No turtle pace of having like, okay, all right, success, go ahead, enjoy your thing, but what? Like how far do I need to go with this? Meeting you and having you and Trista approach me, I didn't feel like I knew you very well. And here are these two. How old were you when you asked?
Oh, for you to marry us?
Yeah.
22.
So here are these two 22-year-olds that I only knew kind of cursory through a guy that was walking around the world in the coffee shop that he liked to hang out at. And here they approach me and they say, "We would like you to perform the ceremony of marrying us." Well, that was not an expected thing. And at first I thought, oh, how cute. And then I realized that I was going to have a responsibility. Like, not just to you and not to your marriage, but to like the gods of union. Like, people change, different choices are made, but performing the ceremony to unite you two was something that I was justifying, I was vouching for your union to the gods, if you will. Not just to your parents, not just to your other friends, and not even to you, but to something big. And I felt I was very cavalier about the whole thing. And I feel like I'm glad that I was, that I trusted. I asked you to. Do you remember what I think I asked you one question.
I can't remember. I think we basically put the responsibility completely on you, is what I recall.
You said you wanted it short and you wanted it to be memorable. And I asked you something along the lines, I don't know, maybe Trista remembers, but something along the lines of you sure you guys really, like, I mean, come on, really? You really want to do this?
Oh. Yeah, it was a good time. It was fun. And you did a great job, by the way.
And that's all it took. And to me, that ceremony meant a lot to me. I didn't know many of you. I didn't know many of you were at the wedding. It was kind of one of the first introductions to your family and the larger group of friends, you know? And the few people from the neighborhood who knew me in kind of a different way, you know, who were like, oh, how strange, that guy is standing in front, you know? So I was free to respect what I witnessed in the choice that you were making for yourselves. And that just stepping up into the moment is a really cool ceremonious act to witness, but also to play some role in. I owe something to my ancestors. I owe something to you and those things that animate your life and that prepare you to make the choices that you make on your own. I don't puppeteer you, you know? And for all of us, I have been touched by grace. I love to take accountability and responsibility for all the things that I can. But I am clear that I am one lucky motherfucker. And that I owe it to all of those things that have built me to live. I mean, thank God for these, man. Like, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And for walking with bare feet, like, it's no offense if you're a reflexology practitioner, but just walk with your bare feet. We're bipedal. We're designed to walk. And so that all points on our feet are reflective of parts in our body? Duh. That it's good for us to walk, to massage all those parts to keep them flowing, and, you know. I've been lucky to have earned in some way a chance to meet people like you, Elliot. It's
just two ways, Ramey. You've touched everyone else as well. So.
Well, yeah, but this is me getting to say it tonight.
Okay.
So,
that's a little unfair.
no, I mean, of course we can have a conversation. I didn't expect, honest to God, I really didn't expect anybody to show up. So, you know, I'm doing this. It's like all my tweeting.
Did you check your voicemails?
We have the phone system. As soon as we have the phone system so screwy, I apologize to everybody. Sometimes answering machines are on, the voicemail is on. We've been traveling a ton. Everything is so screwy, and we're getting close to like getting the kitchen moved up here and things organized downstairs more and everything else. But it has been a dizzying few weeks. It has been a dizzying few weeks. Are you guys comfortable?
Oh,
do you
here.
need anything? Okay, cheers. Thank you.
Would you like some?
I didn't have a chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
I brought some
Sure.
Thai spring rolls. Should we have you bring those out?
Yeah, sure. Or we can go put a plate out, or
For whom? For us?
or we can go out and fill our plates.
Oh, okay,
That's what I
okay.
was meaning, yeah.
You can't eat on screen?
Well, we'd have to tip it upside down,
Oh,
and then it would
there
get
we
the
go.
screen messy, and we'd have to
Yeah.
clean it.
Okay.
Hey, do you recognize this?
Ah, yes, I remember that very well. I was thinking about that.
Encore coffee.
Right.
Huh?
In fact, I was about your age when that happened.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was like 41, 42.
Oh,
I was
okay,
thinking
oh, cool.
about that. It's like, where was I at age 42? I remember that day.
I set this mug out too. This is my Rasta Monkey mug, and a friend of mine got that for me as a housewarming gift
Oh, that's wonderful.
in Ontario. The Rasta Monkey.
That's good.
That's great.
Crystal Corner Bar.
Yeah, that was a fun night.
Yes.
That was a fun night. Those were a fun couple days.
Yes.
Good
yes.
hostel
Was it
experience.
$2 or $2.50 for a pint of Guinness? I forget.
Oh, I don't
It
remember.
was cheap.
Yeah, it was cheap. It was cheap. And all those poor little door alcoves.
Yes. That's right.
Just off of Willie Street. I'm sorry.
We diverge.
Yeah, public washrooms sometimes are hard to.
There we go. Oh, we're up at the Capitol too.
Well, that was a ceremonial.
That was it.
Yeah, that one had to be done. That one had to be done.
Ceremony.
Yeah, and that's that's the damn crazy thing, like. So I was in Madison, and I went to Madison, Wisconsin because I had no idea what the hell else was going to happen. I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to be doing. Every time I tried to show up and engage in some system and say, hey, this is interesting, let's do it, let's go, the system was like, that was kind of like Fairbanks with me, and up until 2000, 2001. And I was fortunate to, so I was working for a coffee shop in downtown at the co-op, and one morning 4 different people mentioned Madison, Wisconsin in like crazy obscure references.
The co-op here in Fairbanks.
Yeah, here in downtown.
2 Street Station, right?
2 Street Station, yep. And so this would have been 2000, 2001. Yeah, like winter of 2000, 2001. And I don't know, I pay attention to details. And when somebody really reaches to insert a place in a conversation, and in a morning shift, when you're, everybody that comes in on a morning shift. And so for Madison, Wisconsin to be like forced into the conversation 4 times all before noon, I was like, okay, I'll go. So I booked a ticket and I went to Madison, Wisconsin. And literally, I just stayed at the hostel and walked around town. But things like, so it was just after Christmas because I had been given some chocolate-covered cherries. Who gave me those? Can't think. Who gave me those? And the last one I was eating on my way to the airport for the flight, and it had a pit in it, and it knocked the filling out. Right? So I was like, oh man, So I get to Madison, and I go down Willie Street, and there's a co-op, like it's all hippie natural stores. So this is 2000, right?
This was early 2002, I think. That was my recollection.
Was it? 2000, 2001. I thought it was the winter of 2001, 2002.
Yeah, so it was early January.
Or 2000 to 2001?
I think it was 2002. Early January 2002 when you and I were there.
Okay. Yeah.
William was a senior.
So Willie Street was Williamson Street, I think is is it in Madison?
Yeah, Williamson. Yeah.
And so there's a co-op, and so it's the granola greeny natural food place. So I said, and the hostel is just down the street from there. So I said, hey, do you guys have a dentist, that you recommend? Because get this looked at. And they said, oh, everybody here goes to, man, I don't remember his name now. I have it written down.
Ooh,
sorry.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
That's if you insert these, there you go, Amy.
Karen is pulling out
Yeah.
stops
Hey,
here.
Karen, if you'd like to pull a stool or chair in, please, as you're comfortable.
Maybe we'll wait.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll work.
You're not going to come up, Karen?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. So we'll just
I know you.
go
No.
on there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I want to get that one here. You need a plate?
Sure, I'll grab a plate. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Oh, we can get you. We're so short on
Oh,
silverware,
I did-
glass, and stuff.
I did bring one, but it's out somewhere.
On tie.
Would you like some more wine on it?
I would love some more wine. This is delicious wine.
This is great, Ramey.
You guys are really missing out there in New Zealand.
Now, did you make this, or is it actually the name of a winery?
No, this is, I believe his name is David Ramey. And it's, I think there's a few vineyards down in Napa I've never visited. But the 06 was, the cork broke, and unfortunately the bottle is corked. Unfortunately. So I all these little ceremonies, I kept finding myself in very fortunate places where I could never get grumpy about any lack. As insulting and as absurd as so much of the experience was, I kept stumbling into the situations where I met really interesting and genuine people. So I want to parlay this and say that tonight that what this ceremony is for me it's that fulcrum. It's that collapse of many stories, of many histories, and I will certainly be responsible for my words and actions, but heretofore I'm going to have a greater expectation of other people to step up and into their own story and experience. If you think about someone graduating with a degree of some significance, or an engineer, say, passing their licensing, their board, right?
Yeah.
That there's something that, in effect, from a Tuesday to a Wednesday, you don't wake up any different. But one day you're not recognized as something, and the next day you are. For really no reason, except for all the reasons that made it possible for you to accomplish that. So that's why I'm hoping to use these few hours tonight and this dinner, is to try to bring in all of that, so I'm no longer so easily tempted to extend the responsibility for other people to step up into their relationship and their accountability in my life with them, in my experience with them. So to then swing that into a conversation, perhaps, that you guys found yourself in this situation with no influence from me. None. No influence whatsoever. And I missed you guys so intimately during this. But you and Trista decided to end your marriage. And you decided, somehow, to create what you felt was an appropriate ceremony to recognize the new choices you were making.
This is very true.
I think that is so brilliant.
Yeah, for those who don't know, there was a ritual that was basically the separation of our marriage that amounted to basically a funeral. So the death of the marriage, which both her and I participated in. It was an amicable breakup, but the ceremony was full of emotion, to say the least. So.
How did you, what I most want to know is what the feeling was inside of you that inspired the idea for the ceremony itself. Whether what happened reflected what you were first inspired the need for, but I'm interested in the actual physical, if you can, the physical sensation of that gave source to the idea to have a ceremony like that.
The source or the act of participating in?
Both, if you can.
Okay. Well, I think that when someone, I mean, this is going to get a little personal, maybe we'll deviate a little bit, but from the topic at hand, but when someone is feeling emotional distress, or there's a large amount of emotion that's being built up that has not been properly communicated to the community, one feels as though there's a tremendous amount of release when that information has been shared to all your loved ones. And at the time, my wife and I had a pretty large community. We were the center of a pretty large community for our peers, and we had sauna every week. And so it was used as a way to like tell them, you know what, things are changing. We're going to be okay, but it's important for you to know what's going on inside of our minds. And so like it was a very natural thing. But it's very much so a communicative. It's for an audience. It's for there's a certain amount of distress, I think, that someone gets in their heart when they feel as though there's a part of them that they're hiding from their loved ones. And even if it's a really, really kind of a horrible feeling, even if it's something that they're not even really proud of, be able to get it out. It's like confessing your sins. It's like you say, you know, this is who I am, this is the state of affairs, and I'm glad, and now you know how to relate to me now. And that was the ceremony of my divorce. But very natural. I mean, like, you don't have to try to pull these things out of you. They just come out because they need to be said. It's for everyone else. But at the same time, well, that's how it feels inside your mind. But I mean, it's very much so a selfish thing. It's maybe in a sense you don't feel as though you know how to relate to the people around you because there's something inside of you that you haven't really come to terms with yourself. That, like, yes, my marriage is ending. I need to, like, tell everyone that I know that, and that I'm going to be okay, and I want you to see that I'm going to be okay. Anyways.
And and it's almost like running into. It's like somebody who's really spontaneous. Do you know how somebody who's really spontaneous, they may look like, oh, don't worry about it. It may look like they're just carefree and no worries. They just off on a dime doing whatever they want, you know. But how there's a kind of spontaneity in which it comes from being like having everything, all your ducks in a row. So that you know that you're free to just do whatever because you know not everything's going to fall apart because you know how everything is structured. You know what parameters you have to work, and within that you're free, and you can just be excited and free within that, which makes it look to others like in that movie One Giant Leap. Tom Robbins tells a story. And I'm gonna do my best. He tells the story as Bodhisattva is on his way to meet the Buddha, and he passes a monk sitting in meditation, and the monk didn't choose very well and sat in baking sun with no shade and happened to sit right on and next to an anthill, and ants were calling up, and he says, "Oh, you're going to see the Buddha. Please ask the Buddha, you know, how many more lifetimes until I'm enlightened?" You know, just okay. And the Bodhisattva continues on, and he comes across this other monk who's dancing and singing, taking sips of wine, you know, and he says, "Hey, you're on your way to see the Buddha. Ask him how many more lifetimes until I reach enlightenment." Okay. And he goes and he has counsel with the Buddha, and on his way back he comes across the first man first again, and he says, "Oh, you saw the Buddha, how many lifetimes? How many?" He said the Buddha said it's going to take 6 more lifetimes for you to reach enlightenment. Oh, 6 more lifetimes, you know. And the Bodhisattva continues, and he comes across the next man, and he's still dancing and singing and having chips with guacamole and having a good time. And he says, "Oh, you saw the Buddha. How many more lifetimes before I reach enlightenment?" And the Bodhisattva says, See that bush over there, that tree?" He says, for every leaf on that tree is another lifetime that you'll have to live before you reach enlightenment." And he says, "Is that all?" And then right then, you know, he reaches enlightenment. There's a truth to that. What enlightenment is, I don't know, but I do know that the acknowledgement of honest people coming from their heart and their soul, and holding space to care for other people through a traumatic event, for everybody involved at all layers. the ability to genuinely come across that is something that proves to me grace exists. Because I have needed people like you. And you have been the worst thing for me, but you've been the best thing for me. Because I've needed lifetimes on a tree. I've needed all of these little blessings of the universe proving to me just how solid it can take care of itself. That without any of my own doing, young, intelligent, caring people existed, and that they were fighting for their lives and for their hearts, and that they were pure in that. And I've spent so much of my life talking to crowds and people, and they were so hungry for that inspiration. They're so hungry for that heart. I would do a speech, and I would have 50 people lined up here and 50 people lined up here, all waiting to give me a hug. Because I was anything special? No. But because they could look at me and see something in themselves that they cared about deeply and intimately. That somehow they could look at themselves in the mirror and say, "You're fucking beautiful too." And I loved that, and I needed that. All those hugs, all those ceremonies that I had in that. But meeting you when I did, it was the universe telling me that, dude, we got your back. Like, you've got to deal with what you're dealing with. You know? Like, you got to trust that we're going to take care of this. Going out with you and Jake on that boat was the first time I had ever been able to experience younger men taking care of something when I wasn't the one that had to be responsible for it. It was so much fun to just kick back and let you guys take care of things. That's like the first I'd ever been able to experience that. And it was so unexpected. And it was such a treasure to be like, these young guys got it. You know? Like, because it was fun, but because what it told me at that point in my life, with the other adventures and crazy shit and relationships that I was in, and the education that I was getting, and the multitude of personalities and Rameys that people know out there, while all that was happening, I could come back and the universe could provide me value. It could provide me food. It could provide me a recognition that it was working. But see, here's the thing. Like when you see somebody, say a really good bottle of wine from a certain vineyard, and then the next time you see that bottle of wine on a shelf and you're looking for a bottle of wine that has a taste that reminds you of what that bottle of wine is, odds are you're gonna gravitate towards purchasing that bottle of wine. It's not because your allegiance is coerced into supporting that company, or that you need to respect and honor the person who provided you the glass of that wine. You don't necessarily think all of those things, I don't imagine. You just know, shit, that was good wine. I think I'll have that wine again. You know, and you move forward with it.
It may be a different vintage.
And maybe that's what you want. You know what I mean? Like maybe what you want is familiar, but being introduced to the new. You know, maybe that's the experience of it. To say, oh yeah, I know what this is, but since I know what this is, my ability to tell bullshit from not bullshit tells me maybe I want to try this one to shake it up a little bit. Try a new vintage. Or maybe you make the choice because of what's available and all the factors that go into that. But the idea of being, God, it's just of being present in that experience. To be aware of, oh, I'm choosing this as my way of choosing this, and these are the things that are influencing that. I wonder if I want to have this experience, if I should go this way, or if I want to reinforce this experience, I should go this way. Who's there? What's the, and you kind of go through that unweaving, but then kind of weaving it back together to make the choice. Go ahead.
At some point, I don't know how the format of this necessarily. I mean, is there a point in which we should ask questions, or can we ask questions?
Go ahead.
Whenever?
Go ahead.
One of the.
We're just making this up. I haven't been checking.
There is no format.
Or is it all?
It's all formatted.
All constructed.
This is definitely not constructed. If it was constructed, it would come out much more beautiful on this end, at least. So, my question is that I think that for the most part, first an observation, then a question. An observation from my own life is that for the most part, much of what I don't micromanage with any kind of mechanistic causation of like, especially when I'm doing things on a proficient level, whether it's at work, doing engineering, or motor skills are a great example. You talk about being I was thinking the homunculus, the person inside the head operating the machine. But a lot of what we do when we become proficient at something is that we kind of like think of it as like a zombie is taking over the system, and it just kind of happens on autopilot. A lot of these decisions, a lot of these things we choose to do, we don't necessarily have to operate a mechanistic explanation of why we do them. And I guess my question is do you feel as though you have a propensity to do that more so than other people, and do you think that that had something to do with your brain injury?
Yes and no. It's almost the inverse. It's almost I like these, but I like these as
What is it?
it's a water wiggle.
Oh, okay. Never seen it. Oh, there comes your finger out one end.
And it's a water wiggle, and how it kind of feeds on
Okay.
itself, and like how it's a thing, but it always kind of like what it is a process of feeding in on itself. Like that's what it is. It doesn't do anything. It's like the noun is a verb.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with your question, there's a so during the Olympics, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation was not allowed to broadcast outside of Canada, and I listened to the CBC quite religiously. I love the CBC, but I was left without some programming, and so it forced me to expand some horizons. And I found the program On Being with Krista Tippett. Great show. Thank you, Krista. On Being is a great show. And she always starts her interviews out by asking the people what their earliest exposure was to religion, to spirituality, but I think she does focus it on religion. So I'm gonna rephrase your question a couple different ways. And then I'm going to answer them so that there's kind of a mosaic. It's like sighting your rifle. One bullet's okay, but if you can put 10 rounds through, you're going to have a much better idea of where that bullet's going to go next time, right? So I'm going to try to do that. I've never understood anything to work in a mechanistic way, ever. That's been one of the frustrations that I've always had. And I had some early experiences with my body which proved interesting. You know, they found I had problems with my knee for a while when I was in grade 4, and nobody could find anything. They did x-rays, they did x-rays, they did x-rays. Nobody could find anything. And I mean, it just I wasn't going to school, and so my mom was working for a ready mix company in Golden, Colorado. This is early '80s. I'm in grade 4, and I was with her and was hobbling around, and we went to a clinic there in Golden, Colorado, and the guy said, you know, there might be something there. Let's angle it a little bit and let's see if we don't see something. And he says, yeah, there's something there on your way to surgery. I had surgery that night, and what they pulled out is a 3/8-inch piece of piano wire. Like, they checked it out. It was like patented piano wire that was in my knee.
How had it gotten there?
You said you have a piano? Do you crawl around a lot? Maybe I had stepped on it and it had crawled up. But the honest truth is, when he said there was something in the x-ray, I was, what? I don't know why one day I didn't want to go to school, right? And then I didn't know how to come clean. So then I get put into this hospital room with a kid in the bed next to me who dropped the M80 on his foot and blew half his foot off. So they're pulling chunks of his ass off to put on top of his foot. And it was an interesting time to reflect. It all happened very fast. You know, going in like early afternoon, and then all of a sudden the doctor's saying, yes, there is something in your knee. And you're like, what? Excuse me? And then you're in the knife, and then that evening, here's a kid crying about how he dropped an M80 on his foot. Whoa, what just happened? You know? And it was about the same time that my mom grew up with a lack of a personal, how do I say, a personal comfort with a religious tradition. And so she searched. She didn't have one. And it was in the late 70s that I think through some colleagues and some coworkers and stuff that there was a church, they call it a Church of Religious Science Mile High, based on Ernest Holmes' writings, which is basically positive thinking, you know, and quantum reality, and that God is a force. Whatever you call it, doesn't matter what you call it. It's what is your connection with it in your life? How are you tapping into that, which is your access to that thing that we all know is bigger than us? Call it what you want. Like, that's cool, but how do you access it? So very early, I mean, 6, 7 years old, I had these experiences which just kind of said this is the way it is. And I had models of how it wasn't, you know. I didn't have strong, especially male persons in my world saying, this is how you should be, young man. There was a lot of alcoholism, there was a lot of abuse, and there was a lot of negativity and a lot of violence. And I didn't see it making anybody happy, you know? So if I have the power to create pieces of piano wire in my knee, again, think about it, me as that kid. When you didn't think there was anything, and then all of a sudden they pull a piece of piano wire out of your knee. You're like, what the hell? And then you're being exposed to a spiritual tradition which says, yeah, that is the way it is. That's exactly the way it is. And that means you have the power to do that. You can scale that up, and you can scale it down.
Right.
You can run with it. That's the way the world is.
So you at one point didn't want to go to school, and so you said your knee hurt, and then the doctor found a piece of wire in your knee after you had
After
been
some
at the hospital.
weeks
Yeah.
of nobody being able to find anything.
Right. And so you believe that your mind was able to manifest the feeling of pain, which it eventually did manifest, and you started to feel. Is that correct? Once the doctor found something, you did you feel a profound change once he removed it?
Well, I mean, certainly the surgery. I mean, certainly the rehabilitation and the surgery was something that I felt. But I think I can only attach to a memory of it feeling like an inconvenience. Like I have the memory of sitting on that bench because I expected him to come back like all the other X-rays. Well, we don't know what it is. We just don't know what it is.
Right.
So it was like
It was your out.
it was a shock.
It was your
It was my out.
But it's more
So-
powerful than that in
but-
a sense.
So and that's the thing
Yeah.
is that I didn't think I manifested it in my knee.
Right.
What it was is I couldn't explain it. That's what I attached to. It was something that I obviously didn't make it happen. How could you do that? Come on. I mean, my mom voted for Reagan both times. It's not like, yeah, I grew up in Boulder, but, we didn't grow up like hippies. That wasn't the reality. So it was a very practical approach. It wasn't like, oh, I manifested this in my knee, like, oh, the power of positive thinking. It was practical. How the fuck did that get there? Because, so then it brought into the question, did I feel it, but I didn't feel it, so I attached a thought to it?
Right.
Is that so I started to try to figure out how that happened.
Yeah.
So then I started to go to science, and I started to go to philosophy, and I started to go to all the people who were taught, when you go to school, what do they tell you at school? Go to the library. Let's go to the library to study a project. Like that's what you do. You go to the bookshelf. So here were books on the bookshelf at my house about relating to relationships with people, about relating to relationships in your body, things like Dale Carnegie and Ernest Holmes and Walking on Hot Coals, and then also in science, and you learn about, you learn physics, you learn biology, you learn, what happens when you chew on crackers for 10 minutes, right? I mean, you go through all those things, and yet your experience says it's not quite like that. Like that's not the whole story. Mm-hmm. And then you find out that that's what science said too. And you're like, oh, phew, thank God other brilliant thinkers figured out that this science wasn't answering all the questions. So then you go and you learn from those scientists. And they say, well, this is how the world actually is. This is when we pull apart and we tease apart these things, this is what we're experiencing. And I was a little kid when Friedrich Capra talked, and I got an autographed copy of the Tao of Physics. I was interested in these things because I was witnessing things I couldn't explain. I was experiencing things that just puzzled me. So you could say it was mechanistic, but I think it was just a human curiosity of, oh, here's a condition or a puzzle, I can't answer it. How do I answer questions? How do I solve problems? Here's a method. And you go to school and they teach you, here's a method on how to do that. And then here's a method on how to talk about it. And here's a method on how to explore it. And so then I learn. And all those scientists continue to tell me that I had an intimate choice, that I could wire and rewire, that manifestation can happen in all number of different ways.
Yeah.
So when I hit the injury, it made me more me at the age of 15. It reinforced the things that I pretty much already knew, but here it was, you're either going to die or you're going to live. Now what are you going to do? Exercise? Exercise. Do something. What are you going to do? Yeah. When you can't move, when you can't communicate, when you can't share what the hell's going on, you don't have any idea. You wake up and there's smelling salts pasted to your face and you're in some room with x-rays, and then you don't know anything, and then you wake up and you're on a couch in some living room someplace that you don't recognize. Like you think you took a nap and it was 3 weeks. That you look at pictures and you go, wow, I thought that was like fake, like I thought what I was experiencing was real, and what the pictures are showing was the fake, you know? And then you take a shower, and then people expect of you to act. So I think it was a very human experience to use an intelligence of asking questions, of revealing process. It could be that was a very mechanistic approach, but to me, it's what and I can speak more to what it was like as the perceptions were happening at the time, if you're interested in those.
Well, no, I think you've answered my question.
Yeah.
Yeah, the nature of my question was exploring your personal thought process, and so I think we've done that. But the only other thought I have in this that you've kind of opened up, it's just like engineering. When you explore a thought, you usually end up exploring more thoughts in the process. It seems as though you had kind of an explosion, if you will, into a exploration of the subjective philosophy that you say you didn't have with a religion. And I mean, there's a lot of power to subjective thought and personal associations that we make that really, like, science can't help us out with. They can try, but there's these personal associations we have with certain events or emotions that we attach to certain things that, like, is highly personal. And I imagine that would have been really hard to kind of work through with a brain injury. Because if you're relying on guidance in a subjective world, a subjective, like, what you're really lacking is a subjective grounding. You're trying to rely on other education and what you can find in a library to tell you what to do. You're going to be lost.
But see, and this is...
That's my thought.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the way it was, but...
Yes, that was the way it was. And so this is such an important thing, the motivation behind it. If I thought the world was mechanistic and only those structures and only my ability to outwit and out-navigate and out-engineer my school system, my family, my whatever I engage with, man, it would have been done.
It doesn't work that way, though. There's a part of there's a system that most common people utilize that they have no understanding of how they do it, and thus there hasn't been much exploration of the mechanistic reason. Ask a person how they see, and people can't tell a blind person how to see. There's a lot of things that we do that is kind of covered under the subterm metaphysics that, like, we just don't explore because we just take it for granted. Why people do what they do.
And often why we do what we do.
I mean, just like most people don't give it much thought because it's just kind of, maybe you could say evolution is driving them along, but most people don't have to, like, construct those patterns because that part of their mind is working properly. Maybe that's a problem that you came about, and most people couldn't teach that to you because they'd never really had to put much thought into it.
And that's one of the reasons why I feel so, just generally, purely, just so lucky, because had I not been exposed to the things I'd been exposed to when the injury happened, if I hadn't already learned how to trust some parts of the intimacy of the reality that I knew already existed, not the reality that I was taught in school, not the reality that was being demonstrated to me, not the reality that culture and society was saying, here's Michael J. Fox, be like this, or here's Tom Cruise, be like that. But I had already had an experience to challenge that, like hey kid, you don't have to. That reality doesn't have to be your reality. So that when the injury happened, instead of seizing on the need for popularity and the need to fit in, or the need to use the injury as a crutch, or to use some other misfortune as a crutch to position, to play a victim card, what it allowed me is to kind of envelop that and use, like that's where there's something about this, there's something about that process, the way that experience was. I was able to kind of turn it in on itself, and then to process the intimacy of every moment in a way that allowed me to rest, that allowed me to heal, because I couldn't function in the world with the head injury. Like I couldn't. I was blacking. I hit it. I had to show, like, I never discounted that life, but I had to live my life as though the injury never happened. That's what I needed in order to get back from it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I needed that act of deconstructing every moment to be able to be present and alive for this event tonight. And that's what I'm trying to share tonight is how rich and built that experience is. There is no objective and subjective. It's been well versed by really smart people who've spent a lot more years on it than I have. And I've read enough, and I've considered enough, and I've talked with other really smart people enough that I'm willing to trust and gamble my life on the fact that I've done enough research to know that objective and subjective are bullshit. So I'm not going to organize my life that way.
Be useful.
And a hammer is an incredibly useful tool. But if all I think that I'm going to do in my life is use a hammer, whether I'm cooking or whether I'm making love or whether I'm nailing nails or whether I'm driving to town, then I'm going to be profoundly disappointed when that hammer doesn't giddy up and bring me into town. You know what I mean?
One has to stop thinking of things as tools at some point. Just kind of be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And when your being allows a condition for you to float in seas which others find disquieting, you can't but share the peace that you feel.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you discount the disquiet, but you can't help but share the relish, the bonus, the calm, the knowing that, I mean, what's the big deal? What's fear? What are you afraid of? Who gives a fuck? What is there to fear? What, broken leg? Ouch! Your head getting cut off? That would suck, but then you're dead. What? A big brain tumor that makes your head expand to like the size of a 100-pound cabbage and then explode like at dinner one night? That'd be gross.
So you're saying that this is just another mental state in which you can observe. You don't necessarily have to act out on that emotion. You don't have to necessarily let that emotion consume you. You can just say, what is that emotion?
Well, what is there to be afraid of? So that emotion.
Fear takes us on. This is something that is like when you're afraid. You know this, but we don't necessarily have to act out on those things. I guess.
Yeah, we might be afraid of an airplane falling on our dinner tonight, but I don't know. It might be kind of strange to act on that fear.
Right. That can be very.
Right. So then when you peel it back, right? When you bring back, that's an absurd example, but
What are you afraid of? Your heart getting broken? You afraid of dying? You afraid of, your heart failing? Your mind shriveling up into dementia? Like, you afraid of losing people you love? Like what are those things? And are they as likely to happen as the airplane crashing on the house right now?
Yeah, there's a certain power to surrendering oneself to things that one can't necessarily control. That's how I take that. I don't know, it might be something completely different than you're trying to say, but when you fear something and like you choose not to act on it, one can just watch it pass, just like another drama that one's watching on television.
And I think that's true. I don't know. I don't think there's. I need to actually give just real quick credit to two people, very quickly, and I'm doing this more for posterity than anything else. The work of Daniel Quinn and Derek Jensen have been very important to me, and I'm going to credit Daniel Quinn right now in the idea of there being one right way. I don't know how your experience is of it. I am excited when we sit in the sauna and we share the differences in who we are and how we approach things, and I should expect that we approach things differently. I mean, isn't evolution something that lots of us are trying lots of different things to see which one succeeds so that our species continues? Like that's an interesting and an engaging and fascinating process. The way I experience it is not that you don't recognize the fear, it's that you do recognize the fear. That is exactly what makes you fearless. That it's that, and I'll credit Derek here for some of this language, it's that going through that ultimate layer of hopelessness, like V for Vendetta, right? When finally Evie is free because she's willing to give her life and not give the person up, in a sense, right? That when you lose all hope, when you're completely stripped of it all, there's an ultimate freedom there, right? Because then it doesn't matter what you do. Because if it doesn't matter what you do, if you have no hope for anything that you can accomplish or who you are or what you're about, and it's just completely fucking hopeless, you might as well be dead. Well, there's a way to react to that, which then allows you to go, well, then I can do anything I want. I mean, there's death and there's life. That seems to suck. Seems to limit some options. So I think I'll do this. And then what is it going to matter? Is it going to matter that you don't have two legs? Is it going to matter, that you're blind? Or is it going to matter? Like, I don't know what that is for some people. I don't know how some people survive. How do you survive being raped and beaten by your family? How do you survive that? How do you come out and like be a really interesting and passionate and good person? You know what I mean? Like, thank God I've not had to face that, because I don't know how I would survive it.
But there's a certain power of realizing when one is able to. The empirical evidence of resilience is a very powerful gift for suffering.
And it seems that no matter where any of us come from, no matter what our story is, each of us have an access to that control, to that passion, to that wellspring of the gods, if you will. That the objective and subjective of that experience is exactly dependent on how you want to approach it. Fuck. That sucks, because it would be a lot easier for me to blame people. It'd be a lot easier for me to try to go get a check for other people to pay for something. You know? Like, it's a lot easier to not have to shoulder that responsibility. To not have to look yourself in the mirror and go, yeah, you do know better, but you're making this choice for this reason or that reason or this reason or that reason. I don't begrudge anybody that experience for themselves. But I haven't been loud enough about how I've experienced that choice. And I've lost many, many friends and relatives. Most of my blood relatives, I've lost contact. The ones I have contact with now, it's one of the reasons I'm doing tonight. It's because they don't know me the way they should, the way they need to. They've spent my nephews and my niece, all of them. They spent so many years, so many months, so much time being exposed to people who were reinforcing to them ideas and beliefs that that ran contrary to their firsthand experience. I don't care what somebody says about me, but when I look at my sister was a victim, my brother was a victim. But just like you, Elliot, and just like you, RJ, and just like me, you have to fucking grow up. And you have to, at some point, say, I'm responsible for how my life's going to turn out. And if I like it this way, or if I don't like it this way, there's at some point, I got to do something about it. And it's going to be on me. If that means it's on me to ask for help and then allow the help, or if it's on me to solve it, at some point, like in Araya Mountain Dreamer, one of her books, she talks about all the battered women that she'd been, exposed to over the years, and all the stories of, well, when there's enough money, or when the kids are a certain age, or anything else, then I'll leave. But it never happens that way. At some point, you just say, fuck it, I've had enough. I'm not going to live like this anymore. And it doesn't matter how many clothes are in the bag, or how much money you have, or gas in the tank, you go. And now it's a new life. So if we have an exposure that that's the way things work, then there's a certain freedom we don't have to worry about some things. Like, we don't have to worry about there being enough money, or when the kids are a certain age. We can just go, you know what? I can trust myself to know when I have to leave this situation. And I'm not going to guilt myself. I'm not going to pressure myself. I'm not going to make myself feel like shit. I'm not going to make myself listen to being inadequate. I can trust my own bullshit detector to know that when I have to get out of here, I'll figure out a way to do it. Now, whether you're a woman being abused and you have 2 young kids, or you're a kid who gets kicked in the head at 15, or you're a young person with your wife and you decide to split up, or you're 85 and you can no longer care for your 87-year-old husband because he's become violent with dementia, and your mobility is severely decreased because your knees are not as good as they used to be, and you've been hiding it for so long, and now it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. How do you know when to step up into that situation and change it? To act. How do you know?
You just know.
So when people work against themselves to create situations and environments which reinforce their inability to know, when people shroud themselves in experiences and relationships specifically so that they withhold the accountability for themselves to act on what they know to be true, that's what I will not have any more tolerance for it. None. I will not have any more. It's taken my brother from me. It took my sister from me. It still may yet take my mom from me. It's taken my friends from me. It's taken the love of my life from me. And I won't have that anymore. We have to step up into our bodies. This time now, the extreme conditions of what I've been able to, when I talk about that calm level, well, Elliot, you're good at things, and maybe sometimes, and maybe not yet, but at some point, you might get tired that everybody expects you to be good at everything. But sometimes you just wish that you could just not be good at something and people still say, that is so cool that you're doing that even though you suck at it. I had just gotten out of the hospital and I scored, and then when I took the SAT and the ACT, I missed like 2 questions on the ACT. You know? And so they said, you don't have to take any math in university because you scored so high. And I said, well, what if I like it? If I show aptitude, wouldn't you think you'd encourage me? Like, would you like to encourage me?
We'll put you in calculus to start. Yeah.
And they said, no, don't bother. You don't need to. Why would you take something you don't have to take for your degree? I thought so too. So it's this engagement with the system. If the system would have accepted me, if a peer group would have allowed me to be popular or to fit in.
You're talking in retrospect when you consider the locus of control to be outside of yourself before you were taking responsibility for where you were. You're saying that it felt as though they wouldn't. You couldn't feel at home because they were not accepting of who you were, because it seems as though you're saying that there's a point in which in someone's life in which they have to assume control. Not control, but responsibility for their own choice in life and their own place in life. And that's kind of akin to this idea of the coming of age, of a ritual of coming of age. And so you're saying in retrospect, looking back upon your college years, that's...
Well, no, what I'm saying is that interface, that membrane of living presently. What's a convenient way of talking about of taking responsibility for yourself?
It's never someone else's fault, it's always yours. That's the extreme.
So when someone has made the choice to reinforce a reality which allows them to hide from their own voice of what's right and good, it becomes a different language. Like my sister's a victim, but she's also accountable. And that what was done to her, what she felt she needed to do in order to react, this is my perspective on this. What I've witnessed is that she surrounded herself in becoming more the victim. That she manifested more relationships to create that she was being taken advantage of, and literally couldn't identify or hear, not because she's a bad person or anything. It's a survival technique. You have to tune out. Most people do. How can we? I mean, the level of environmental stuff. I mean, how we treat people the way we do, how we allow things to happen the way we do. We turn a blind eye. We actively engage in a willful blindness, and a lot of it is necessary because to take on the full effect of so many things would overwhelm us, including beauty.
Of course, we don't want to take on full responsibility for everything around us. Yeah, and it's a survival mechanism to be able to feel as though we're in control of our lives, to be able to outsource certain responsibility, so to speak.
Here, I'm just going to say that. Yeah.
If you were to take on all the responsibilities of all the world within your locus of control, anything that is coming off negatively would be it would be horrible. So in terms of the perspective of like prescribing agency, I mean, because clearly not all thought is this way, but when one is like kind of doing the blame game, it can be very advantageous for certain people in their lives to assume a lot of the agency of their environment. People who have money. If you have lots of money and lots of free time, hey, choose agency over lots of things. But if you don't have money, and you're a really shitty place in life, Better to emphasize the idea that it's out of your control. It probably would give you more peace of mind, because then you don't have to think about these mechanistic explanations. You're kind of where you put that locus of control is basically determining how much you're going to consider. How much internal thought do you want?
Exactly. And so if you're able that whole experience, that whole world, that whole process, do I engage in this conversation? Do I act on it? Does it cause problems with this? Is it going to interfere with this? Is this going to cause me more energy and stress? Like that whole mechanistic, like cost and benefit, that whole process. If what you're able to do is just kind of ball it up and just kind of set it over there, if you're able to just ball it up and set it to the side and go, oh, that's a world if I want that to be my world, but I'm aware that it doesn't have to be my world. That I can engage in that world as I want to engage in the things in that world, but that the world itself is this world of agency. It's this world of engaging in rewiring time, in changing the past because you're engaging in your present and you're manifesting your future. You're I wish I would have taken an easier path. This last year and a half or so is this dinner tonight, I needed to get some stuff down because I don't have anybody to tell stories to. I don't have anybody to get some of the stuff out. And it's been 5 times now that I've faced the chess game of death, and I don't want to take my chances again with that. I'm surfing this experience right now of that, and the purity of experiencing my mornings and my days, and the intensity of preparing for this. I really don't give a shit who likes it or respects it. That's part of what this for me is a processing of. I love this place. I love the North. It's in me. But fuck all those people that aren't here. And fuck me for not doing enough 14 years ago and 4 years ago to have the people that should be here. And you can say, well, that's an asshole thing to say, but it's like saying bless you at the same time, because I have to have that resonance of those realities, that manifesting of this current experience. It's a chord that's a part of my nervous system. It's a thing that literally resonates with a rhythm. And this goes into some of my pain management and stuff, where it's like, think about a nerve stretched on a guitar, right? Like a Spanish guitar, and then just think about going to town on it, and then think about every note and every like, oh, how did they do that? Like, oh, how'd they do that? Being like intense pushes of pain. But what if it's just the music? What if it's just tunes being resonated with some charge? So if you're able to feel that, experience that. I don't know how to. I don't know how to talk. I don't. You know. I lack for people to talk about it. You know, like all the different sensations and putting all the words to it.
You know, what you're saying makes me think of something I had on my office door, my former office, and it's like I tried to live by it, and the older I get.
And have you been on yet?
Picture. No, I haven't. The older I get, the more sense it makes to me. It's
another
quote,
shiny bald head.
A quote from William Blake, and it says, "I must create my own system or be enslaved by another man's." And the more I live, the more I realize that that is how I must live.
Yeah.
And that's what I try and do in my life every day. It's not always easy to create one's own system, but that's the way to live and to truly be alive.
So then imagine that from birth, what it is that you experience a community in which no matter what your ability, your intelligence, your size, your strength, no matter what you're done is what you're able to do is be brought up into an existence where that's the way it is. Where that's the way it is. Like there is no like not able to do it because what you're doing is constantly stepping up into your own existence. And that we each have to support that process of each of us stepping up into the existence because we each know we're each dependent on the other people supporting the environment where we can do that. Right. Think of us as a mammal in the species. We're born as incredibly vulnerable infants.
Yeah.
Why? There's got to be a reason, you know, to be so dependent. And then imagine having that sense of connection, of that sense of dependency, of that sense of, hey man, I'm vulnerable because you got to take care of me, you know, and you got to take care of me, and I got to be as strong as I can because I got to take care of you or your babies or your babies' babies. But the way we do that is each of us. William Blake was brilliant in how he approached this. And imagination is how we approach our constructing our reality through our own experience, through our own imagination, through our own heartbreak, through our own stumbling through learning to walk, learning to love, learning to experience grief, learning to, you know, all those things.
It's our own organic way of growing.
Yes. Simply. It's so fucking simple. What do you want to do? What you want to do is going to be the best thing for you to do. Now, are most people going to want to sit and play video games all the time? No, they're not. How do I gamble that? I'll gamble 150,000 years of human existence on that. No, they didn't have games back then. But how would we have evolved? How could we have possibly evolved if we weren't careful? If we didn't relate? If we didn't say, dude, your experience as a shaman is incredibly different than my experience as a hunter, but you don't know how to hunt, and I don't know how to be the shaman, and we're probably in good shape if we figure out a way to create this together.
But there's so many things in our society, like video games, that are imagination destroying. Because when you think about it, you're not using your imagination to play that video game. You're incorporating someone else's imagination at the expense of your own.
And the gaming thing is interesting, and I don't know how to go into the gaming thing without going into the tech thing, because so much of what I'm exposed to in the tech conversation today is really about an exploration and an enjoyment. I mean, not like as a gamer would experience the interaction, but in terms of, wow, it's like,
well, how to incorporate these things without sacrificing your own imagination? How to?
And so if you set that in a ball, it's like if you just set it on the shelf. Here's another elephant.
Oh, great.
There's another little.
Nice.
I just want to call out all the elephants on the
Oh,
table.
is that the baby one that needs all the caretaking?
Yeah. Yeah, there's all of them need
Why don't you
caretaking.
put him on top of the big guy there so you can ride?
I don't know if they'll balance. Yeah. The fucking hell. You gotta acknowledge elephants in the room.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm all about that.
What if it can be a different way? What if you can set all those expectations in a little box and say, well, maybe for a week I'm just going to set them aside and approach it that maybe none of that stuff matters.
That would be good. Just step away from it for a period of time. Get a different perspective.
Which may or may not mean that you walk away from gaming.
For good, right.
It may or may not. Not even for the week.
Right.
But what it is that you say, I'm going to give myself a different modus operandi, a different structure, a different reason to step into the experience of gaming.
Right.
That if I game, I'm going to pay attention to everything I'm experiencing while I'm gaming.
Right.
Or while I'm dating this person,
Right.
or while I'm driving the car, or whatever. I'm just going to really pay attention to that. If you're willing to not just engage in that activity without thinking about it, like we were just talking about earlier, right? Then maybe there's another way to experience that.
You can gain a new appreciation, but you need to let your mind go fallow, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, go fallow. I mean, I don't want
It's to take a break from it to get a new appreciation from it, because if you don't step away, sometimes you never look at it freshly.
Yeah.
Go running, go to sleep.
But the stepping away doesn't always have to be a stepping away from the activity itself. Sometimes the stepping away can be a stepping away of how you're engaging the activity.
But
If you're still gaming 30 hours a week, still game 30 hours a week, but don't game the same way for 30 hours a week.
you can step away from a particular task, but how about the notion of stepping away from a certain mental process? You know, if we look at the mental process of like examination, like stepping away from the process of examination, or like linear thinking, or mechanistic thinking, I think that explains why a lot of people are really addicted to exercise. I've been really getting into running myself.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's wonderful because it's like I just imagine a tumbler, like tumbling rocks, their ideas, and you entertain thoughts, but they 5 seconds at the most.
But when you run, your brain works differently.
It
Exactly.
works
That's
very
what's so-
different. Yeah, and so you're putting down the mental process. So it's like I think that one can go about video games very similar to how one would go about designing a house. It's very intense, where you're not thinking about anything else but the task at hand. But so yeah, you can switch tasks, but putting down a mental process, type of process.
A mini sabbatical.
Yeah. Very much it can be abused.
So if you take a sabbatical within yourself, where do you go?
You do something else, or you maybe do nothing. It depends. You choose.
And so if you have to do it just within yourself, where do you go?
To cite, I mean, like
Within yourself.
Carl Jung would say that there's 4 states of consciousness. And so, like, instead of like thinking about things, we maybe are doing, or acting, or we're sensing, or we're feeling.
Maybe you're working in the garden instead of intellectually thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
you're still within yourself, but you're doing a different activity.
And so what if your activities were limited? What if you were quadriplegic? What if you were locked in? What if you
Maybe
were...
you get the assistance of someone to help you engage in a different activity. I don't know. I'm just offering suggestions.
Yeah,
I don't know, but you might want to call on others, and others might be willing to help you do that.
And
Because that would be something different for them too.
yeah, yeah, and that's part of that's part of the engagement that I'm creating here with this, is that I haven't found a way for the richness of that experience, that calm, to share it,
Mm-hmm.
because I know how to bring that into other people's realities. I know how to help identify that, not as a for you, but because I'm not dead, because like I don't think people understand the severity of this experience, of this pain. And instead of, like, I don't want to talk about, like, oh, Ramey's so great because he's dealing with all this pain. No, what I want to be heard, what I'm trying to have be heard is, don't you see the resources available? Don't you see the work and the education and the experience that's necessary for me to operate like this?
Mm-hmm.
So with my ability to step into the fullness of that experience, the way that I understand it, can you not see the value available to you in this? I mean, look at the ridiculousness of this fort that I've built in the middle of my upstairs.
Your upstairs is looking very nice, by the way. The beautiful doors I've seen, the beautiful flooring you've done.
Isn't that tile awesome?
Yeah, it's
dude,
really good.
The universe
It's
totally.
great here. I've been here in years, but it's looking really good.
Oh, and that you should look at that tile, and then I did a mosaic, and I broke those full tile sheets, 2 foot by 1 foot, and I just smashed them with a sledgehammer in my foot, and they fit perfect.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Full sheets. I used up full sheets. There's not bits left. I mean, there are, like 10 itsy bitsy little corners like that. And that's all that's left. They fit perfectly. And I was dealing with the labyrinth at the time. I mean, this is part of this experience. I was dealing with the labyrinth at the time, and the reason that I was doing the labyrinth at the time is because I found that doing the pattern helped. Like I'm not taking pharmaceuticals. I don't have any insurance. I don't want any insurance. I am taking responsibility for my health, for my life. I am not going to hide from this experience. And I can't be disassociated from the pain. Not now. I haven't had antibiotics in over 20 years. Like I have to feel the thing. So when working on the pattern of like a labyrinth, when it allows the pain to go away for a little while, to recede a little while, you're going to do it.
This is Ramey care.
This is human care. This is just the way that I experience it. But it's not the freaking labyrinth. Like saunas. Saunas have been a counterpoint for me in recent months. They are incredibly uncomfortable, but they are so grounding because I know what they do to me. It's like going barefoot outside. When I feel it, I know it's real. I know that there's cold ice affecting the bottom of my feet, and I know that pain and that sensation is a real thing because I know what it feels like. Because I have numbness and I have fiery spots and my face still twitches, and it's it's maddening. It's fucking maddening. I mean, people talk about like people cracking under pressure of PTSD and concussions and stuff. Fuck, man, can't I get a pat on the back because I haven't acted that way? You know what I mean? Like the absurdity of how far I've had to take the extremes of this experience. It's been just so beautifully rich.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've needed to be so bloody stripped raw from that experience.
Mm-hmm.
From this experience. And that I made like William Blake, who what was it that he was dug up 11 days after he was buried, or that somebody was buried on top of him a few days after he was buried, or something like that.
I don't know that story.
Like he was crazy, right? Nobody cared about him on his death. Nobody, fuck all those people who think that you have to die a martyr, or that you have to, I don't want to run away and just live by myself in the forest. I shouldn't have to do that. If we're creative and inspired people who have something to share, fuck you, I should be able to just do it if I want to. I'm not hurting anybody. If you can't tell the difference, then that's your problem. It's not my problem.
Right.
You know? So I followed the rules. And those bastards who held up people like William Blake said, you really should do it this way. Oh, look at these masters who learned all these things. This is the way the world works. This is science. This is physics. This is philosophy. This is the essence of who we are and what we're all about. Oh, by the way, if you look at our history, only look at this much. Don't look at the rest of our history, but only look. Well, why would I do that? Why would I look at an experiment that is only like this much instead of like everything I've eaten in my entire life if I was trying to figure out what is the mass of Ramey's history with food? Why would I just look at this chip? That would be stupid. And yet they asked me to consider the human experience here as just this one chip in my entire dietary experience? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. So here you are telling me I need to get good grades, that I need to listen to what you say, that I need to read the contracts, that I need to do all these things. Okay, I'm doing them, and now you're the ones not doing them.
Yeah.
And then that works on the personal level, on the structural level.
So,
What?
so do you know? You can tell I have something to say.
There we go. Chime in.
You know about the little tunicate, the little tunicate that floats around the ocean that eats its brain. You heard about this?
No, is this a story or?
I think I did on Quirks and Quirks.
This is a story, but this is also a little scientific little tidbit, and I think it's important at this point in the conversation. Anytime something goes a little bit too philosophical, I think it's an important pragmatist grounding. There's a little tunicate that floats on the ocean that has a brain, and at a certain point in its life, part of its life cycle is to find a rock in which it wants to live the rest of its life, complete its reproductive cycle. And upon finding this rock, the first thing it does is it digests its own brain. And so evolutionary biologists have kind of theorized that basically there was no evolutionary advantage to having a brain once the need for orchestrated movement was no more. And so it was of evolutionary advantage to utilize the brain for energy rather than utilizing it for thinking. And so one of the kind of pinnacles of thought, at least in my mind, that this story tells is that all thoughts should lead to action. And so why would a tree, likewise, why would a tree have a brain? Just to sit there and not tell them to anyone or do anything with them, you know. And so one can spin their wheels thinking about things for an immense amount of time, and it makes sense that one should feel aggravation, in a sense, in having them when they don't lead to action for so long. And so I guess my question, I mean, it's just a thought, it's a comment to throw in there, but also like, you know, these thoughts lead us somewhere.
And these thoughts have
Where-
made the
where
difference
they don't
between me
necess-
living and dying.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how any more practical to make it than that.
Yeah.
Because I either explode or I find a way to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's in those moments. How do you know that you should cut your arm off with the little itsy bitsy pocket knife when you've had a rock fall on it and you're in the middle of a desert in Utah and nobody knows you're there? How do you know how to do that? How do you know to deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
You all you can do is you can't prepare for that. Because even if you go through the activity of going, okay, well, if I get caught with a rock in a canyon where nobody knows where I'm at, and I have this little knife, okay, I'll
Right.
sit there and saw through it, no problem, and I'll get away, I'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
All that philosophy and all that stuff, it doesn't matter. It's right then. How are you going to deal with it? And if you've spent some time with people who know some wilderness first aid, and you've helped some people before, maybe you saved a kid who fell down some rocks, or, then maybe you got a better chance than other people who don't know. Doesn't mean you read the handbook on how to cut off your arm to save your life, but you've operated your life with an anticipatory intelligence, so that you've equipped yourself with a range of skills, tools in your belt to deal with the circumstance that you're in. So it's not about highfalutin ideas and philosophy. It's about practical solutions to finding ways to exist in the everyday situations that you're in. And if you're spending 300 days a year in empty canyons of Utah, it behooves you to have some exposure on how to deal with the things that you might find yourself in.
How do you think ritual, bringing it back to this idea of ritual and ritual being important in your life, and you saying you're not having it, how does the thoughts on ritual and the importance of it, and how does that relate to action in your life of doing something, changing it? I mean, you said that you kept on saying that this is a pinnacle, a fulcrum point, and so how does that translate into action, apart from having a beautiful dinner with beautiful decor? What action does that represent, apart from just the mental thought of it? I mean, if the mental thought exists for the motion of something, orchestrated muscle in the case of the tunicate, or something else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's don't want you to predict the future. I mean, it's hard to say, but like, how does this, to turn the question back on you, when you ask me like what I was thinking in my divorce.
Well, wine, Ramey?
Sure, I'll have just a little bit more. Thank you. And make sure that you guys have enough too. Thank you. Thank you. Let me I never lit all the candles. I was trying to get the water came at 6:30, and I was trying to get the water pump. We've been without water all day, so that's why I didn't get the fish made. And I was trying to get the pump primed and everything, like with a minute and a half to spare. So I was like, oh geez. Let me. Two stories, and I will predict the future. That might be story 3, but it'll just be a prediction. It's this concept of legacy. And if you don't ritualize an experience, then they may not exist. If you don't ritualize a value, an education, a wisdom, a lesson, a teaching, somehow, call it a lyceum, call it a university, call it a class, call it dinner, call it a brother, sister, call it a nephew, uncle, call it whatever you want to call it, husband, wife, call it whatever you want. But somehow you negotiate some kind of active process and ritual. Well, I'll go back to my sister's kids, my nephews and my niece, and I spent a lot of time with them, would have them for months at a time, and did lots of different adventures. Mm-hmm. Months at a time.
They came up here in the summer quite a bit, didn't they?
Oh yeah, and Cord first came up for a couple of months while he was in high school, and we did some work and worked at a vet, during the winter.
Yeah. And Kai, I think I remember.
And Kai, yeah. And so one of the trips, up, okay, thank you. We were driving and we got to Montana, and one of my nephews, this Kai and Nori and I, and he informed me that he didn't have his wallet, which was his ID. And we were already in Montana driving up from Denver. And so that was kind of like, okay, now what do we do? You know, like we're on a time crunch. Do we have it sent up? Do we go back? Do we, you know, like we're crossing the border today. Like we're like a couple hours away. And so that for some reason, I'm not sure why it happened at the same time exactly, but it stimulated a conversation where it was the first time that I was aware that they had not really, how do I say that? Like taking them on trips, and I was like, you know, now if I have kids, you know, you guys are gonna have to do all this stuff for them, like I've done for you, you know, like.
There we go.
And I looked at the rearview mirror, and you could see the wheels turning, like.
That'd be a pain in the ass.
Oh, shit.
Wow. I wouldn't want to
Like-
have the role reversal here.
Oh my
right
God!
there.
Like, spend all that time and spend all that money, and you know, like, oh man, like how many times did we go to Disneyland? Like how many spring breaks and trips hiking and going to Moab and being caught in storms and, you know, crazy 10-mile portages with a canoe and fish jumping in, you know, like what? I gotta do that, you know? And then I realized they really had no idea why I had done what I did. They that all the time and all that energy, though it mattered, of course it mattered. It allowed them exposure to things that they would not have ever gotten. Their father is a total mess. He's a total fucking mess, you know? And karma is going to right his ship. I have no worries about that. Nevertheless, that man owes those people everything because he's a total fucking mess. And he has been disastrous towards that family. Disastrous towards that family.
So you were doing what was needed to be done for them as a loving uncle.
They had to have something.
Of course.
How could you not? You know? And they were cool. It wasn't pity.
Right.
You know? It's because that's the way we
Because
did
you care,
things.
right?
Yeah. You know? I mean, my mom didn't know much about fishing and stuff like that. She didn't know how to clean a fish. But, you know, we got out there, we went fishing, and we found this old guy that ran a motel, and that's where I learned to clean a fish. Like, you figure it fucking out. You know? So that's what we did. And those kids needed it. And at all the different times, they were born so spaced. But they each had such an identity and such a reality that they needed the exposure. They needed the outlet. Not because my sister was incapable, but because I know what it's like to not have the outlet. So, you know, like sometimes I don't know how there's something about me, guys. I don't know what it is. There's something about me that just really turns people off. And I guess maybe it's that I'm as
You're very
innocent.
intense, Ramey, and maybe people are
I
not
guess.
used to that level of intensity.
But-
I appreciate it and enjoy
I like it, yeah.
Yes, but for a lot of people, it's
Well, I know
a
that.
little too much.
But it seems like I know that.
Well, you asked the question.
I-
I was wondering.
so it's like this.
I offered my thoughts.
So-
but, you know.
So like this. So what I did? No, that's awesome. So when somebody's talking about driving the Alcan, okay, and somebody says, oh, I've driven it before, and oh, what is it like, and everything else, like, I don't know how to participate in that conversation.
How many times have you driven that road?
So
Sorry.
I'm the asshole who shows up and says, oh, I've driven it 45 times. Who wants to talk to me?
Right, yeah, it's like,
Right?
right, yeah.
It was
And
like
yet-
dogs and
I have a lot of interesting stories about driving the Alcan. I've done it 45 frickin' times.
Right. Right.
You
Your
know?
stories would take over all the other people's stories, so
Yeah, and I don't want to take over, but I do want to be present.
Yeah.
And if you've done it 4 times and you've done it twice, I can be at the same table with
Right,
you,
right.
and I can enjoy your 2 times,
Right.
and I can enjoy your 4 times. I can also enjoy my 45
Right,
times.
right.
And I don't I don't
Right.
know why I've been so fortunate to have
Right.
had the experiences that
Right.
I've had,
Right.
which put me in a situation where if you start talking about something, you're not gonna like
Right.
me if I start talking
Right.
about what my
Right.
experience
Right.
with it
You
is.
could simply say, I remember the second time I drove.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it. It doesn't work. You know? It doesn't work. So here's the practical. This is what I'm trying to say. So here's
Yeah.
I added that. So that was story 1B. Because what I realized is that as genuine and pure as I was in spending that time in trying to do exciting, explorative. I mean, I'd loved Alaska since I was in grade 2. I glued little cotton balls on blue crepe paper and made Eskimos and igloos, you know? Like I love the North. So for me to have come here and to have had the experiences and to have gotten to go to the places in BC and to meet the people, how can I not, like if you say I love action movies and I see the most amazing action movie I've ever seen in my life, how can I not say, oh my God, dude, you've got to see this action movie. It's amazing.
This was your initiative to come up here? I mean, that's the reason why you came up here? You were up here with your mother and said during...
Oh, no, I came up, so I built my undergrad.
Your mom kind of came here after you, right?
Yeah. So I built my undergrad interdisciplinary studies program at the University of Northern Colorado, and for the last year of the program, I built in an exchange to come here, because what I was trying, the title of that program was The Dynamics of Social Relationships with emphasis on youth and education, because I was trying to figure out why. See, I entered the university with an idea that the university was this base of knowledge and wisdom, which would welcome you to share in its wisdom and its experience. And if it didn't offer you what you wanted, then it would support you to go out into the world, because we're all in this together, of course. So go out, young man.
Idealistic Greek vision
Go
of
get it
university.
and bring it back. But I got that idea
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow. I went to public schools.
Yeah.
Like, somehow I was given that idea. Blame it on the movies, blame it on Reagan, blame it on whoever you want to blame it on. But somehow I got that idea that that's what the university was. And within a semester I found out that's not the case. I mean, I had an English professor, honors English professor, make a fist to throw a punch at me because he didn't like the topic of my paper. And I said, dude, you don't have a right to have an opinion on the topic of the paper, but you can help me try to share my opinion. You know, and he'd go out and he'd smoke cigarettes during when you'd have an office meeting with him. You know, so I walked away from that meeting right there like, why are you trying to punch me? Like, I just want to work on my like, I just want to do what you say you do for your class. Like, why are you gonna fight me? So I went right from there, right to the office of this sociology professor, Jim Marshall. Bless you, dude.
Double thumbs up.
He's one of my only mentors that's still alive. I tend to kill off, like seriously.
You'll kill off you start living.
Man,
Right?
woo! Few of them are dead, so I'm glad a few of you guys are still alive. But, you know, and I only hooked up with Jim Marshall because the university, you know, when I went for my student visit, they hooked me up with him. That was the sociology professor. There's more to that story, but that's who I hooked up with. So from that meeting with that professor, I went right to his office and I said, I just want to do this paper. So then we did it as an independent study. And that's what then kind of bloomed into this process of, like, okay, you call yourself the social sciences, and yet you don't give any credit to science whatsoever. Like, you're not following anything scientific whatsoever. So what are you doing? Like, I'm really fascinated about, like, at that point, I'd already been doing keynote addresses. Like, I'd already had a field named after me. You know, I'd already touched people in ways that, you know, and I never planned it. Like, it all just happened. Like, stuff with my knee, and I also had stuff with my stomach in grade 6, which is similar to my knee. That was kind of like, whoa, what the fuck, you know? And I can get up in front of hundreds and hundreds of people without any speech for an hour and a half and just solid, it's good, you know? And so here's this young kid in their 20s, like, so, like, the fucking university. like public speaking, right? An official required class. I'd already been paid like $800 an hour to do keynote addresses. Like, you're gonna make me do a public speaking class, you know? So I went to the graduate student, and then to the main teacher, and then to the department chair. Like, I can give you videos. I can give you, you know, like, dude, seriously, why waste my time with this? Like, give me something to work on. Like, give me things to be impassioned by. Like, let's get some stuff done, because the university is about this, right? And they're like, no, you have to do this. No, you have to do this. And I'm like, why? Why? If you, when the director of the program looks me in the eye and says, the reason we do public speaking, required public speaking, is so that people are comfortable in front of other people.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, like I got videotapes, dude. Like seriously? Like, I've done week-long leadership seminars for high school classes. Like, seriously, you're gonna, like, can I please spend my time with school, like, learning things? You know? No, you have to do it this way. You know? So the practical aspects of engaging in the decisions of where your energy goes, of the outlets, like I'm gonna die if I have to take what I know to be true for my life, like the things that I know my body is capable of doing, the things that I know my head is capable of doing, that I can sit there and Gesundheit. And pass your bullshit tests when I've just come out of the hospital like that? Like, seriously? And you want me to respect that process? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I can't. Give me something to respect, and man, you've got me. You've got me. But if you can't, then you're not going to get me. And so that allegiance to the process, it gave me that energy, that commitment to expose Cord, Kai, and Nori. And I wish it was more with Jeffrey, but his mom made such a good decision for him, my brother's son, and got him to Germany and raised him there. It was the best decision for him, no doubt. But it meant that another one of our family, 2 members of our family were just taken away, just poof, like that, because they went to live in Germany.
Are you in touch with them much or not?
We are now. After my brother's death, they felt more comfortable understanding me,
Mm-hmm.
And not as much as I'd like, but
Mm-hmm.
but that's true for everybody that's at a distance.
Yeah. But just living up here, that's one thing about living in Alaska. You may have a lot of your family elsewhere, and it's not the easiest place to come and go from.
Yeah, that's very true. On purpose, and to some extent, for some of us, I don't.
Well, I love
did
it. If it were
purpose,
close, if it were 50 miles from North 48 or 10,000 miles, I love it here. It really is. It is kind of sometimes an intentional decision, but right now, at this point in my life, it's where I live and where I love, and it's.
I don't know how I'd function living somewhere else in the United States. Yeah. I don't know. It's so I don't want to lose your question, and so that's the point, is that when I guess we had gotten on to why I came here, and when I built the degree and I was trying to use the education to find out where it was I got the idea of what education was. So I used my undergrad as kind of a mirror to look at my education. And so I built that last year into coming up here. So that when that was the case, why, like you want to parlay that, right? I mean, you want, when you experience something that's special, you want to expose and you want to share that.
Right, and expand upon that. You don't want to just stop.
Yeah. And so it was later that Karen felt like it gave her a better shot. We couldn't afford to stay in Boulder. Boulder outspent us so fast in the late 80s and 90s. There was no way. The property taxes and the pressure of keeping up with the Joneses. They call you in, your grass got a little bit too high, they call you in, you know, and there was just no way. There was just no way.
They'd come and contact you, the authorities.
The neighbors
grass
would
cutter,
complain that your grass isn't mowed enough, and
and the authorities would come and contact
then
you.
you could get fined.
Wow.
And we lived right across the street from North Boulder Park. I mean, an incredible place to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
But we just couldn't afford to stay there. There was nothing there.
They were not tolerant of tall grass there. Huh?
Well, and they weren't tolerant of you know, as much as the rhetoric of how cool Boulder was, the diversity of the essence of what made Boulder was outspent.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Yeah, that's the
Wow.
view from our front step.
Oh, so that's the camera. I think they should. Yeah, that is incredible.
That's
Wow.
the view out the front door in Boulder.
It looks like a Albert Bierstadt painting,
Ah,
if you know who that is. Wow.
and you know, I grew up in Boulder thinking I'd never leave, that I'd buy the
Yeah.
house for my mom and put a second story on it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But
Which mountains are those?
the Rocky Mountains,
Rockies? Well,
yeah, right there at the Front Range, and you
Wow.
just walk. I mean, we're right at 8th and Delwood, and
Mhm.
so if you just walked up, I mean, it's right at the foot of the Rocky Mountains. That's where I mean,
there was something called the Flatirons. Are they around?
that's
that-
that's them right
That's
there.
it. Okay, so I was wondering. I climbed in those a few years back. It's
Yep.
great.
Yeah, that was our front.
Wow.
So I didn't know any better but to take the interesting and the exciting, and then to share it, and then to be found out on that trip to Montana, back to Alaska, to realize just how pure the misunderstanding was of why I had done all those things. You know, I have a cousin, and I just heard this through the grapevine. I don't pay a lot of attention to family rumors and politics. But here's, to give you an idea, a little bit of what's reflected back to me as what my family thinks of me. This is my mother's family. I'm not in touch with my dad's family. That in the early 90s, with my girlfriend in university, we went on a hiking backpacking trip into the Four Corners and stuff. So I had a family in Vegas, so we went to Vegas. And on the way, my fuel pump went out on my truck, and in St. George, Utah, which, you know, we had a hard time finding a hotel room and like service at the restaurant because we weren't married, and like, you know,
Did
yeah.
you tell them you weren't married?
So well, you know, I mean, we're camping out of the truck, you know,
Right.
the fuel pump goes out, like,
Yeah.
you know, it's a Saturday afternoon or something, so we had to wait an extra day for the place to open. So we get to Vegas, no problem, replace the fuel pump, okay, no big deal, right? Like, it cost us a day and an interesting experience. We get to Vegas, and we see everybody, and one of my great aunt's sons takes, and it's not that they have money or anything, but they're not struggling, they're not trailer park, you know, suburbs, okay? And he takes a $100 bill, and he says, here, you better have this. He stuffs it in my pocket. You better take this just in case, make sure your car's okay. And I was like, okay, fine, sure. No, I don't need it. Okay, fine, right? So I get home, I just sign the check. That family's been, my grandma, like, she would write down, if she gave you $20, her book, like everybody talk about her book, how much money you owed her, and whether sometimes she kept it, sometimes she didn't, and, you know, whatever, but it's been a thing, right? and how some of my relatives deal with money, like some relatives, when you're at a table of like 10 people at lunch, they'll break out the calculator and break down like who owes what in tip and everything. Oh
gosh.
You know, like, I understand people operate that way, but so you gotta stop asking me questions because you keep going off on all these stories.
But you've gotten a question. There was 3 points or 3.
Oh, we're still
So the
going
first
there.
one 1B.
We're still 1A, 1B.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still going there. So okay, we'll just jump right back in. So so the $100, I send the $100 back, and a check, and that's it. It's all done, right? Like, it's all done. Years later, and I'm talking like after I've moved to Alaska, I hear through the grapevine that there's still discontent between aunts and cousins and stuff like that, talking about how I never repaid the $100. Even if I didn't repay $100, like, seriously, a kid in his young 20s with his girlfriend, in a truck driving around and you can afford $100, like you're going to hold on to a $100 debt for that long? Like, seriously? Really? That being said, it was done. Like I when it first came up, like I was like, oh my God, did I not? You know, like I was worried because I have a hard time knowing, like I'm a pilot in this thing. Like the implications of me sitting in the audience when my life is on stage and all the rest of you are on stage with me and I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate this thing. It's real. It means every conversation we have is I'm going through that. It means that the incredible dynamic intensity of all the things that we've experienced are all about that engagement. So I thought, oh my God, am I, like, fuck, am I going crazy? So and no, there was a canceled check.
Okay, I was gonna say your check was cashed. Yeah.
So but the fact that they held on to that, going and getting an education was more like, oh, so now you think you're better than us? Instead of being celebrated that I'm the first in the family to ever go to university, it was a non-thing. It was such a non-thing, So
you reflect back on those situations now, thinking that perhaps, like, those are kind of trivial, that although they may have shaped your life in a momentous way by having your relatives think about those things, like, now that you can kind of just shrug it off.
It's that I considered them trivial for as long as I did. They're not trivial. It's a bullshit way to be. It's a bullshit way to treat people. If you have a young person who's inspired by something and they're a good person, and you don't step up and do something to save them, fuck you. And I have not lived that way enough. And so and here's going back to 1A, I put so much time and energy into being something for those kids. And what did I get for that? I got called names. I got called the bad guy. Even though I would have those kids for a couple months at a time, their parents would badmouth me and turn me into something and create motivations. I had a cousin who actually suspected some kind of sexual attraction or abuse with my niece. Why else would an adult man, want to go and spend time with his 11-year-old niece at Disneyland? Well, screw you, woman.
Well, a lot of times one can invoke a little bit of compassion into the decisions of others because they don't know of any other better way.
I know. And Elliot,
why
and I'm going to interrupt you, okay? Because I'm going to accelerate this point, okay? I gave that benefit of the doubt for all these years. Mm-hmm. And here's where it's gotten me. You guys are here with me and my mom. Mm-hmm. I don't like that I didn't know if I was going to make it to this day. I'm scared to death what's going to happen. You know how some people, when they are healthy and then their spouse dies and they have no reason to live and they die? Right now, I am scheduling things to look forward to because I have been meeting this night and I don't know what's going to happen. I've been skirting that situation and I haven't spoken up enough. I love my sister and my family and the role that they played, but you know what? They're full of shit. They're full of shit. And they feed each other's delusions. My grandma died. Death presents an opportunity for us to negotiate the reality of the happening. That it's happening. That the story of this person is now fundamentally different in our lives. And I was going through intense experiences emotionally as it was, and my grandma dies, and I swear she waited until my mom got there, and we had a few hours of hospice care, and she died early in the morning the next day. And family gathered, and I had an aunt and an uncle who played the big shots, and, well, cousin so-and-so wants to get here, take this credit card and make it happen. And we all gathered for memorial, and people that I hadn't seen in years, people that hadn't seen me. I'm half my dad. My dad's not the same dad as my brother and sister. And I have, genes are genes, man. Shit plays out. Blood is real, So people say, oh, you have this mannerism like your dad, or you look like your dad, or whatever, So there's just all these layers of piling over, And we go to the memorial, and here's all the people that we spent some Christmases and Thanksgiving with, and what do? They talk about this woman who just died. My grandma too. She was my grandma too. And they talk about her in some fantasy way, like she was some gingerbread grandma that just loved and cared and caring and was just all grandma-y. And I love my grandma. My grandma was the best grandma she could be. But my grandma was an abusive woman. My grandma was a manipulative bitch. You know, my grandma behaved incredibly poorly with lots of people, but she didn't know how to. I mean, Christ, her mom died of the Spanish flu when she was a baby, 3-4 years old. She didn't know. It wasn't her fault. It wasn't her fault. But can we be honest? Can't we be honest about the alcohol abuse? Can't we be honest that on a Christmas holiday, that the kid who's 7 years old shouldn't be the most responsible person at the event? That the kid who's 7 years old shouldn't be responsible for moving this huge black guy who's an ex-cop, who's drunk and violent, shouldn't be responsible for getting him, 50 yards to his trailer where he sleeps? I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I am eternally grateful for all the things that they did to get me here. But I need a fuller accountability for who I am, and I need to make it possible for all of us to have a fuller accountability for those experiences. My nephews and my niece, they need to be able to trust their primary experiences. Whether they like me, whether they like the experience of all the traveling and all the Disneylands and all the different things, all the conversations, whether they like that or not, I don't care. That's up to them to decide. They're not 9. They're adults. They've got to figure that shit out, just like all of us do.
Right.
Have you ever had your heart broken?
Yeah.
Guess what? You figure it out or you don't.
Right.
Just
You
like
deal
all
with
of
it
us.
or you don't.
Yeah. So if we can create situations and scenarios where we say, hey, fuck you, yeah, it sucks, you lost your arm. Okay, now what can we do? Maybe my approach, I've been stretched so thin, so fucking thin, especially the last 2 years. I can't take any more of that benefit of the doubt. I have given you all the benefit of the doubt. And now it's time that I take some of that. Now it's time that I say, you know what? You know what I'm surviving? Do you know what I've learned? Do you know what I have put possible? And that you, young lady, my niece Nori, or you, Elliot, and how you know me, what you know about me may not be everything, but you need to trust what it is that you do know about me. And you, RJ, you need to be able to count on what it is that you know to be true about your first-hand experience in me.
Absolutely.
Instead of being brainwashed or encouraged by other people. If you choose to listen to that because your experience of us says, well, yeah, Ramey's an asshole. Ramey is a manipulative asshole. Then I support your opinion, and then I expect that you won't engage with me.
Right.
But if you can't trust your own bullshit detector, then I have fundamentally failed, whether you like me or not.
I think for the most part people rely on their own bullshit detector. I mean, like, we will listen to the opinions of others, but only to an extent. I think you can rely on that as a piece of human character.
Elliot, I have experienced too many people walking away from things that they knew were what they really wanted and were really good to them. I've had people react to me in ways that I was going to murder them. I mean, simply as old ladies crossing the street because I'm walking down it. I would never do anything. But I don't take responsibility for that because I would never do anything. They're not crossing the street because they know me, right? So I can't take offense to that. The difference is that your primary experience with me, if I haven't done a good enough job to expose to you who I really am, or if I've done the best job I can to expose to you who I really am, what else can I do? There's nothing more that I can do.
No, you can't. I mean,
But we know you differently from other people. We've gone through different experiences.
Yeah.
Well,
we're on a radio program. You and I have done
and-
all kinds of unusual things that other people haven't done.
And so tonight is my chance to also say that I have done even more than that. and that I need to bring all those things together. That for me, I need to be free. I need to say to posterity that my legacy from this point forward, I have to speak the full truth of what this is. The second story. Because the practical reality of what this is, of what we need to live up to. Elliot, think about what if you guys hadn't did this. What if you hadn't done the ceremony with you and Trista? What if you hadn't? What if you got uncomfortable and you weren't sure how to talk about it with friends, and so you just allowed it to go away? Like so many other relationships, I've known so many single moms, and they're dealing with the effects of usually two, because the man is influenced by somebody, but irresponsible and people incapable of stepping up to honor the choices that they made, to back up the situation that they got themselves in. Mm-hmm. Even if it's going to embarrass them, even if it's going to cause them pain or whatever, fucking man up! Step up! Deal with the situation. Mm-hmm. And what if you guys hadn't done that? And how that affects not just Cassidy, but Cassidy's kids, and how Cassidy moves through her relationships. And then that influences how her kids understand how relationships are done. The way that those choices impact generations.
Yeah, it's true that there is a cause and effect that ripples beyond your own existence, but I think that to try to understand the causation of your... One needs to be really careful about trying to overanalyze the implications of one's actions. It's really important to kind of just analyze your own life.
But step away from...
See how it will benefit you.
Yes. And so, what if what you're doing is benefiting you to the point where everybody says, we want you to be benefited to this point. We want you to succeed like that. Woohoo, way to go. We want you to succeed. And you're stepping up into that. You're doing exactly what it is that everybody says that they love you for, and then they turn around and hate you for it. For doing the same thing that it is that you said, that they said that they wanted. If you say, hey, I'd like some more wine, and I'm like, oh, hey, I'd like to have some more wine, and I pour you that, and you're like, you fucking martyr, you just wanted everybody to make you think that you're a good guy because you gave me the rest of your wine.
Is there any more wine?
And I'd be going,
What's this guy?
there's just the cork stuff.
The cork stuff. That's been exposed.
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
That's-
It's not very tasty. Yeah, it's not very tasty. It's kind of off. That's all the wine that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Darn, I should have brought a bottle.
Oh well.
That's fine.
There's a lot of people that are looking for good friends out there, and the people who are, I wouldn't say backstab. I don't call people backstabbers because people who make misinformed decisions and stab themselves in the foot. And when they stab quotations a friend in the foot, in the back, they're really stabbing themselves. And so that's a choice or a decision out of ignorance. And it doesn't necessarily say I'm going to focus my energy and keep on going to that person. I'll go find someone else who is under the same understanding of life, same communication level. And at some point, maybe those people who are having a rift form between us will come back. And I just...
Yep.
Time for space, but it's no time for any kind of blame or I don't see any value in trying to say someone's at fault for anything other than the fact that I do choose where I put my time. And if I'm living with somebody and in the day-to-day encounter of living with somebody, I can't choose to be not in their proximity of their voice, I will move out. And so I will engage in my environment such that I do have the ability to either spend time with somebody or not, but blaming someone for the way I understand a certain interaction with them, I don't find a benefit.
I completely agree, which is why I haven't done it.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming now. But that doesn't change accountability.
What's the difference?
What is the difference?
between accountability and blame.
What is the difference?
I think that, to me, the difference between accountability and blame, maybe one could, if it seems like one could remove an emotional association. Like, you don't necessarily have to hate somebody. You could say, well, it's the decisions in the ball's in their court.
Accountable to what and accountable to whom? Who should someone be accountable to? To you? To someone else? I mean, what is accountability in that regard? I mean,
and so that's it. So if you say
if you need to, someone needs to be held accountable, but by whom? If you don't hold them
That's a
accountable,
good point.
if you say to me what you want, say something that you want, more wine or whatever, it doesn't matter.
More wine.
yes, that would be awesome. And Karen out.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go get some, but that would be too long. Yeah. The nearest store is too far away.
It's too far away.
We've already had enough wine.
Yes, that's true too. This is the optimum amount.
Yeah.
And so then I have some wine. I say, hey, here's some wine. Then it wouldn't be an unreasonable expectation that there's a possibility that you'll reach for that wine to pour it into your glass, because I heard him say, I would like more wine, and more wine is made available. It wouldn't be a stretch to imagine.
You proclaim that there's wine available, and we're wondering where it is now.
Right. Where's Jesus when you need him?
What a host.
Hey, say amen.
Thank you, Ramey. Cool. There we
Say
go.
amen.
Elliot, you want a little?
Yeah, I'll have a
Hallelujah.
Yeah, there we go.
Hallelujah.
That's good.
All right. Cool.
Ramey,
Close.
you need a.
Here.
All right. All
I'll
right.
do some hooch.
Okay.
I'll share
That's
some
good
hooch.
stuff. Yeah. Okay. Is that garlic in there? What is it?
Apricot.
Apricots. Okay. I was wondering what it was.
Tastes like cough syrup, but
How long has that been sitting in there? For a while?
just a couple weeks.
Okay.
Been corked.
No, that's one, not this one. Although I might have to do something with that one. I don't know. So I don't even provide the wine. I'm just a bystander. I hear him say, "I'd like more wine," and then more wine appears. I wouldn't be like, if I saw him reach for the bottle to pour wine, I wouldn't be like, "What are you doing?" I mean, because I would have already had that awareness of why he was like the cause out, right? I mean, like, oh. I didn't tell him he should have wine. I didn't say, he wants more wine, you better have more wine, or I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to think you're a bad person, or I'm going to think that you made really bad mistakes, and I'm going to call you names to other
You didn't
people.
force it on me?
If you, so where do we go? So if somebody says, Elliot, I love you. I love you. I want to spend time with you. I want to make a commitment with you. And then that person doesn't act that out. I mean, at some point you got to make a decision, right? I mean, when somebody says, Ramey, I am ready for this. I'm ready for this. I'm going to step up into this role. I'm on the train. I'm on board.
Yeah.
That's not me saying that they're on board.
Yeah,
That's them saying they're on board.
Yeah, very similar to a marriage. I mean, somebody says that they're going to do something and they don't. Or a friend says, yeah, I mean.
There's always two explanations. There's those who say it and don't mean it, who aren't sincere, and those who mean it but are, for whatever reason, unable to execute what they mean. And that's always a different question. Is if someone is sincere but can't execute what they want or mean, then you should look at them differently than a person who's insincere and doesn't really mean what they say.
And for some reason I thought there was other people who might have these experiences, and so I went to learn about what it's like to be a wife of an alcoholic, what it's like to be a son of an alcoholic. What all those stories are like. How do you make those decisions? What's the psychology? What's the path? What's the economics of it? What happens when kids are involved? I went to people who knew about the things. I went to people who survived the things. I went to people who were healthy, happy, strong human beings who said, yeah, I survived that, and here's how I did it. If any of this can help you, run with it. If it doesn't, good luck. But go and find some way, because these ways of being are not good. They're not good. And so then as I was in stronger positions, I went to my family members or I went to people that I could help. And I mean, I was a service organization. I volunteered over 3,000 hours one year. Like, man, I would go and I would go and I would go and I would see how people just needed help and needed help and needed help. And at some point you're like, okay, well, you don't need the help that you think you need because what you're saying is not it's not,
Sure.
you know. And then like when my grandma died, you know, we had a hospice come right in, and she died early in the morning, and my brother had been there. And I sat there, I stood there, and I watched my brother sit on this rocking chair behind the door at my grandma's house, and he talked to the hospice social worker, and he articulated his situation as accurately and honestly as I ever could have. His drug use, his abuse, my brother and his violence. I mean, fuck, you know, and he wasn't a bad person. He had a great heart. But can we please be honest about this person? Can we please be honest about his substance abuse? Can we please be honest that he has no controls, no limits, that he's hurting people, that he's breaking people's backs, that he's causing pain and abuse? Can we not be honest? Do we look at the elephant? You know, I had my fucking aunt and uncle bought him drinks. You know? Well, it was his mind, everything else. Okay, I get that. But God, aren't we better than that? Like, isn't it easy to say I love you when you're having an orgasm? But doesn't it count when it's really hard? When it's the hardest to say I love you and to say, hey, man, I got your back. When things are the thinnest and the hardest, isn't that when it counts? That's when it's counted for me.
You're saying honesty and talking about how it is means
And authenticity.
when it's hard. That's when it's hard.
And accountability. Sure. You know, we just came back from 2 days training in Anchorage with a bunch of people who deal with mainly sex offenders, but offenders that are trying to survive, to exist, to be a part of our communities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the world that those people are taught exists because they're spending how many hours a week dealing with people who are violent sex offenders?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, talk about creating your reality. And it's not that they're bad people. I can't do what those people do. I've had friends. God, Kirsten, Ann, God bless you for, you know, so many people who have been able to do that kind of work. I can't do it because I'm not effective. I can't do it because I can't make someone else believe something else. I know I can't. I know they have to come to it on their own time. I know why my cousins and my aunts and my uncles have behaved the way they have. I know why my mom has done. I know why my sister takes the role that she does. I don't blame them for any of it. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to choose that. It doesn't mean when I see bullshit, I'm not going to say, well, shit, it's bullshit. And that bullshit is more true bullshit than my relationship with that person as a family member. Fuck, that sucks. Yeah, it sucks.
Mm.
But I can't, when I'm facing my life, when my death, I can't live like that. I can't, that's hell for me. If I don't acknowledge the truth of that experience, fuck the schools and the way they treated me. Fuck these organizations who show such disrespect for people who have a different ability than what they're used to. Whether it's a physical disability, a mental different ability, you know, these aging populations, we are not going to survive if we don't think bigger and better than what we have. Tonight, I am done with those people. I have given them the benefit of the doubt. I will sit for hours on end explaining why I've made all the decisions that I have. But I will no longer feel guilty or ashamed of having survived what I have.
Well, you should never feel ashamed.
And I've been asked more often to feel ashamed for that than I have been celebrated for it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your confidence, but here I'm sitting with two fine chaps. But the lives that I've touched in my life, I should have this room packed, and I don't. And that's on me. Because I do know better, and I know bigger, and I've held back for so fucking long. waiting for other people to step up into the lives that they know to be true for themselves, and I can't wait anymore. And I've gone as far as you can go. I've found I couldn't. No one can appear in my life that would be more of a soulmate than the person that has appeared. There's no way. Now, I expect I'm going to have a relationship, a brilliant and beautiful and amazing intimate relationship with someone. Then it's not going to be that woman. Maybe it will. I don't think it's going to be. And the amazingness of the relationship that I will have will be more amazing than anything I could have had with that soulmate. Because fuck soulmate. What's soulmate?
It's a concept.
It's you know, this is who I am. This is the way this world has got to fucking be. And I will not allow it to be otherwise. I won't. If you want to make other choices, I'm not stopping you. If you're going to stop me from making my choices, you better expect a bigger fight than what you've had. Because it's going to take all of us figuring a lot of shit out. And I have figured a lot of shit out in epic levels. I have walked on the surface of my bones. And it's valuable. And it's important for you, and it's important for you, and it's important for you. Whether you like it or not, I don't care. All I have to do is make it available. Whether I die and nobody knows me, after tonight, it's not going to matter. Because this goes out, and it's done. And now I can...
You can move on to other things.
And now I can say, fuck you and your benefit of the doubt. So let's sit down and talk about it. Let's be in compassion.
Is that your Kafka quote? Is it the point that you can't turn back?
From a certain point onwards, there's no turning back.
Right, so
that
you
is
can
the
only
point
move
that
on
must be
from
reached.
tonight. So this will be...
Yeah.
And that's, you're going to have to figure out some trust. That when I say, fuck you and your choices, that's a beautifully empowering thing. That means bring your choices to the table. That means I'm just a dude with some property in a house, and I have an intimate knowledge of piecing apart my biology so that I don't take a sledgehammer to my head.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things to share there. And if you're the Brain Injury Institute of Alaska, or if you're some institution of education or whatever, and you don't get it, it doesn't matter.
But you have an experiential knowledge to share with people. That's incredible.
And the intimacy with which I wield that now is more and richer than it's ever been. And my accountability for that is because I'm
Because you're
offering to back
accountable
it
to
out.
yourself for that.
It's me and my gods.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
I would love for my soulmate, for Robin and I to be together. Man, we'd be having a lot of fun. But
Did I ever meet Robin?
no.
Yeah.
But I hope she's having fun. Like I love her. Like I hope she's getting everything she needs and wants. It's like it
Right.
doesn't
That's
matter
all
that
you
it's
can
not
hope.
me. Yeah, fuck that. Like it has nothing to do with me. I've always known I'm part of a body. I've got to be a strong fucking left arm. I can't be worried about how strong the right arm or the right leg or the left leg or the torso or the dick or the vagina or whatever else part of this body that's going to be there. I can't be worried about how strong they're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be strong myself. Then when I'm attached to that body, we're going to rock and roll. However strong the right arm is, however strong the left leg is, they're going to be as strong as they are. And that's the beauty of it. So I don't blame anybody for their position. But I do hold each of us accountable for our ability and our inability to acknowledge the reality as we acknowledge it. And I am intense. I'm intense at every moment of the day. I don't know how to not be intense. But see, I get to be intense for people who aren't intense. I get to do a lot of this heavy lifting in ways that other people don't. I have a dear, important person in my life whom I've never met. She has been an incredible pen pal and perspective and everything for me. And, you know, she says, you know, Ramey, fuck you and all this. You know, like I'm trying to raise 2 kids with a husband that's not making the separation and divorce easy and problems at work. And, you know, like, screw you and all your highfalutin, like, oh, we got to pay attention to radiation in Fukushima. You know, like, what? Screw you and all your, let's build a labyrinth and it helps make the world better. I get that. I get that. Shit, my mom, you can't get more practical than my mom. I grew up as one of those kids. That's how I operate. It's in my body, it's in my genes, you know? But it's also in my genes, like on my dad's side, you know, like one of my relatives, he built a dance floor on railroad springs. So when the floor got really going, like it really got going, you know? I want to do that, dude. I so want to do that. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah,
You guys would come dancing, wouldn't you? If you guys need a toilet or more food or whatever, we can put this on intermission there, I guess. You guys wouldn't mind a little bit.
I get home to my dogs around 10. I have no idea what time.
I have no idea what time it is. What time is it?
Is there time on there?
It's 9:45.
Okay, I'll take a little bit. Then I'm going to take off.
I'm
I got
a little
dogs.
over.
I
hear
got to
you.
be accountable.
I hear
My
you.
dogs.
I hear you. Now's my time where I don't have to be accountable to dogs.
You don't have any right now? God, wow. You used to have a few. I remember that. Blue, my old guy, is like 16. He just turned. So.
Yeah, Dylan died at 16.
Wow.
Alice died just shy of 15.
You've been talking about getting a dog, though. At least I've been talking about getting a dog around you. I've noticed.
Dog energy is strong.
Dog energy is strong.
I'm comfortable that it'll happen when it happens.
I'm fortunate I get to bring mine to work every day with me. I'm out of my office and they're
I
part
do
of the
too.
crew.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, nothing like quit like having dogs with you all the time.
Yeah. You're not at work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
The mailman even brings biscuits for him every day. After one of them lunges out.
Yeah.
The young one, the other one just waits. So.
And that's, you know, it's that experience, it's that richness of those individual personalities, those relationships, be it Blue or Sita or Dylan or Alice.
Honesty, genuineness. You answered my question of like where do these thoughts take us? That's the tunicate question.
Presence.
And being able to call people out on their bullshit, be able to genuinely say what you're thinking and not.
Well, and it's see, it's a layer removed from calling people out on your bullshit. Like if you live this way, you never have to call anybody out on their bullshit. Because the entire climate is about supporting each other on where you are, who you are. And that there is no bullshit. Because we all fuck up. And we all have our hearts broken. And we're all suffering from some illness or disease. And we might turn 111 or we might only turn 41. And why are people taken from us? Why does a young man who has 2 children and a wife and he's just about to start a new job and there's a car accident, just some routine fucking bullshit car accident, and his wife and one of his kids are killed? Why? Why? Why is that fair? Why is that legit? Why should that person be said, well, you're not allowed to feel that because it's not good for business? Because your job requires you not to be affected by the loss of your child and your wife. That you got to show up for work and take care of. You're a teacher? Oh, well, good luck to you and those kids that you got to show up the day that school starts, the day after your kids are killed, to deal with that. Like, holy fuck. I mean, if you're on the Titanic, what do? You don't know if somebody's coming. You don't know if you're going to actually sink. Do you grab other people? Do you grab deck chairs? Do you grab the railing? Do you construct a raft? Do you push people off and get in one of the few? How do you know? How do you know? The only way that I figured that out is...
How do you know what?
How do you know what to do? How do you know how to behave? How do you know if you're ready to go teach students? How do you process the death of your wife and your child like that? How do you know when this ship that's not supposed to sink is sinking? How do you know what's right? How do you know, do you want to survive? How badly do you survive? And then what do you do? And are you going to just play music and go down with the ship? Like, I don't know what the right answer is. But I bet you there's as many answers as there are people on that ship. Well, I'm motherfucking one of those people on the ship. And my Titanic is going down. And it's going down to such an extreme degree, I can no longer be quiet about it. Man, put it this way. Here's a tribe, like the Titanic. Your hunters come back, and they say, animals are gone. Like, they've gone beyond where any of our ancestors' stories say. They don't behave the way that we know. So we don't have enough for all of us to get through winter. And what do you think? You know, some hunters probably think, let's go after them. Some hunters like to eat something else. And some may think, let's do this. And some may think that. We'll say it breaks up into 4 different ways of being, if you will. And I bet you the people that go after the animals, they don't want to be the right ones. They don't want to have made the right decision and, woohoo, we're the winners. Everybody else made the wrong decision and they're all dead. Because they're their brothers, they're their sisters, they're their mothers and fathers and cousins. They're their tribe, they're their people. They want them to survive as much as they want to find the solution. But when it comes down to it, you either go after the food or you find a new way to live. Or you die. Or you just fold up and die. I guess I'm saying I gotta go after the food. And if I find a way to make it work, then I'm gonna haul ass back here and let everybody know. Because maybe you found a better way than I did, and man, isn't that great? And we're gonna celebrate and party, and I'm gonna be so happy to see you and your kids that are healthy and alive. And if you're not doing so good, well then we're going to find a way to get you and your family over to where we're doing better and make it work. And if we're dying and we suck, then, you know, like, I don't wish any ill. I don't wish any judgment on those people.
Is that way that you're speaking of basically the way of just trying as hard as you can? I mean, because like that's what most people do. I mean, whether or not their notion of trying as hard as they can is sitting in front of the TV and watching the next round of TV shows and hoping that the next TV show will provide some kind of new enlightenment. I mean, that's what everyone is trying to do.
And what you're absolutely right. I haven't done that well enough.
Some people give up. They give up.
I don't think they're necessarily trying. They're just accepting.
And maybe, and that may be their way of doing it.
Yeah.
Like I don't care.
Yeah.
It's like a basketball team. Does it matter how the other team is? No, you got to go out there and play your best ball.
Right.
Right. A lot of people aren't amped up doing what they're.
So I don't care whether they do it or not. What I'm saying now is that I have not done a good enough job documenting and educating people on what path it is that I'm taking. Mm-hmm. I have obviously, what's been reflected back to me is a shortage of people understanding why I've made the decisions that I've had, how effective I have constructed this time right now to be built and to be educated and ready to do things right now. I'm not going to sit in front of a TV and play video games. If you want to do that, like, knock yourself out, like, you know. But what I'm doing is this point forward is that you're invited to engage in this process in a hyper relationship.
The intentionality.
To allow the fullness of my William Blake.
Use your imagination.
To be more present. I need to be of more use. It's good for me. Mm-hmm. And people are afraid to use me. I have given people what they say they want. And like, here. Here. Is it money? Is it job? Is it prestige? Is it relationship? Here it is. There it is. And people run away from it. Even at the training in Anchorage the last 2 days, Somebody got up and said, how do we deal with self-sabotage? Because somebody who has lived a life of the things that they love being taken from them, someone who has, every time they've made their heart vulnerable, has had it abused and stepped on, when they're given a situation where somebody says, no, really, you're not going to get your heart stepped on if you make it vulnerable. Come on. It's hard. I get it. It's hard to take that step. It's hard to go, okay, I'm going to take this chance. I get it. And I wish all of them well.
Yeah, but you're going to operate on a different wavelength, and when they're ready to join you,
The volume's got to get turned up.
I totally understand.
The volume's got to get turned up.
Yeah. Expecting something of yourself is different than expecting something of others.
And I will never ask of anyone else something that I am not already prepared to pay.
Yeah, when you are choosing who you will sit at the table to dine with, you expect you can cast the net wide or you can cast the net narrow.
We'll see, like tonight, like it didn't matter who showed.
Mm.
It didn't matter if 50 people showed or nobody showed. Like what does it say? There are 4 viewers right now. Like, it doesn't matter that there are any viewers. Like, I love that there are 4. Hi, thank you for watching. Thank you
Do they
guys
get
for
to
being
speak back
here.
over or not?
Well, I thought they haven't chatted on there, and I haven't
Okay.
checked Twitter or anything. So, but I do all of this for me. I'm incredibly selfish. It's easy to admit. I take this care.
Well, you can't help others if you don't help yourself.
Again, the immediacy of the biological experience that I'm feeling with this pain. I want to tear people's faces off.
Don't do
Like it's how I can't. The frustration, like. The calories that I have to spend in mitigating a lot of the biological experience that I feel, what it tells me, what I've chosen for it to tell me, is that you can pull off all these other things and still spend that much of your calories on that. Whoa. If that pain goes away, look at the energy you're gonna have, and that's what you've got to understand. Like the energy that's here is profound. It is epic, and it's not being channeled into all those things that we hear on the news. Instead, it's being channeled into a 3-week gathering we're gonna have this summer, and let's create, and let's do art. And let's talk about death. And let's talk about these things that are hard to talk about. I so want my nephews and my niece and my sister. I'd love to have all the conversations, but I'm not going to bullshit you, and I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going to let you bullshit yourself. I can't. Why? Because it literally, you want to talk about practicality of all this stuff, how it matters? It literally makes me hurt more. Like I can't function. I can't function if the world is about, yeah, it's pretty shitty, and you better expect to be emotionally constipated 90% of the time, and that's the best you can hope for. Well, then guess what? If that's what I really think, then I'm going to take a sledgehammer. Then that's the sledgehammer I'm going to take to my head. And so it's up to you. Is that the way it is? Or is it some other way? If it's some other way, I'm not hiding. I'm right here. I've been tweeting it. I've been messaging it. I've been offering all kinds of people. I'm right here. Use me. I've got 15 acres. I've got the house. I've got a skill level. I've got experience and exposure to things You know, like we didn't even get nearly into any of those stories of, you know, lots of things, lots of
Many,
people.
many, sure.
Like
Other
I'm
tales,
just,
right.
yeah, just I'm incredibly fortunate to have a rich skill set. And it boggles my mind why so many smart people can't figure out how to better use me. And I'm tired of their emotional and spiritual constipation and all their bullshit. And I wish them well in it, but it can no longer be. My nephew, we had breakfast at dinner at Perkins, whatever, he and his girlfriend, my nephew Kai. And he says, you remember a few years ago you gave me some good advice, and I want to tell you that I think it was good advice. I said, okay, what was that? And he says, you remember when you told me your shit is your shit?
Mm-hmm.
Your shit is not other people's shit.
Right.
You have no right to make your shit other people's shit.
Right. You gotta own your shit.
But you also cannot let someone else make their shit your shit, because their shit is their shit.
Right.
Their shit is not your shit. Deal with your shit and let other people deal with their shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's really simple.
Right.
Really simple. Sometimes in real time, in practical ways, that's hard to know what to do, how to do it.
Sure.
And and I know a lot better how to do that than what I've let on. And I'm no longer going to apologize or make it easier for other people. I don't have time. This world is changing. My body's changing. Like, fuck it. What am I going to do next time? You know, like this experience. Hey, look at that. This year's first bug.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Did it fly?
I don't know what it is.
Crawling thing. Where did it come from? Did it fly?
It just flew
Well, it
around.
must be flying.
Yeah. Oop, there we go. Launched it.
Fly away.
Fly.
This is a little Buddha that I got this last summer.
Cool.
He's a little imperfect Buddha.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's funny. You still rub his belly, huh?
A little broken.
There we go. Oh, well.
Broken. He had a,
We're all little broken Buddhas, you know?
we are all Buddhas, baby. We're not even broken Buddhas. We're all Buddhas.
We're all Buddhas. Right. Right. There we go.
I'm not.
Yes, you are. We're Buddha, but no matter how broken you are, you're still Buddha.
Yeah. Bodhisattva.
I don't think I would do very well on a bodhisattva path.
Mm-hmm.
I think I do more on the crazy wisdom path.
Mm-hmm.
On the crazy. Did you know Carl Jung survived a concussion as a young teenager?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Did not know that.
The Red Book is such a, God, this has been so important for me this year. And that's what made me think of it. Here's Trungpa Rinpoche. This one is Transcending Madness, but I found a lot of benefit from his stuff. Let me just see if I don't have a note here, because there's something. We just came from San Diego and the American Society on Aging conference, and on Saturday, a week ago, tomorrow, was the National Forum on Brain Health. And the keynote for the National Forum on Brain Health, one of the key things, and he's been at this gig for a while, but in brain health, whether it's dementia or whatever it is, the novel and complex. The more that you introduce an experience, the novel and complex in your life, whether it means every fourth day sleep on the other side of the bed, or do something different, shift it up, experience, be aware,
right.
Find, isn't that interesting? Find your inspiration, find that. It's really good for your head.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good for your brain. So now we're talking about Buddha. Now, the whole point of Buddha, right, was that went through all these spiritual traditions, couldn't find this cause of suffering. This is a horrible thumbnail, very brief. Renounced his riches, his prince, his throne. All the spiritual traditions couldn't find any satisfactory thing. Finally decided to sit and meditate. As I understand it, Vipassana, practice of Vipassana, and just before meditation, the Maras appear, right? And they're slinging arrows, and it's the temptation, and it's the seduction, and it's like, oh, but don't you really want life to be like this? You know, like this beautiful structure and how things can be, like this corporeal, material luxury of. Don't you? How can you not want that as your life? Like, you know. And then when you reject that, they get really fucking pissed off. I mean, they get really pissed off that you're like, you know. So they started shooting arrows, right? And he turned them into flowers because he's like, wow, we don't have to play this game, you know. Like, we don't have to do this, and that's that stage of enlightenment. Well, I mean, I was there. I remember him saying, no, I'm just kidding. He's like, this isn't a big deal. You can do this too. I've just done it this way. But your access to enlightenment is just your coming to the realization of your being present now in the richness of these experiences as you experience them for who you are, where you're at.
It's living in the moment.
Whatever your Maras are,
right.
They're not arrows, dude. They're
Right.
just flowers.
Right. Yeah. I know. I think we're all enlightened at times, and times we're not. And the objective is to stay in that state. We all have our moments.
And we're enlightened in that state of confusion of whether or not we're enlightened.
Yeah.
We are okay. We're all right who we are. We're built to be here. The majestic of the novel and complex of each moment of being present,
Right.
of engaging with this right here, right now, with you in this relationship, in making love, in having the death of this person and surrounding myself with other people who spent decades with this person and now that person's gone. Shouldn't we share the memories? Isn't this the time for that? Isn't this moment when I'm taking a shit or when I'm walking on a path and I notice the sun hitting the snow on a branch just this way, or the cat jumps up on my lap, or all these mundane things of existence? In that moment of experiencing them for what they are, how is that not a novel and complex experience? How is that not a rich and novel thing?
Yeah, of course.
It is.
So just living is really good for our brain health.
Right.
That if we live and pay more attention to what we pay attention to, we're going to be healthier.
Right.
Participate in Obamacare if you want. I don't care.
Right.
But what I know is that if you're healthier, I'm going to have a better shot in my community because you're going to be stronger and better able to take care of me if I need it. So that's another part of this tonight, which is good luck to you if you don't believe that. Good luck. Because at some point you're going to knock on my door and say, hey dude, you got a way to solve this problem? You got a way to survive the loss of my spouse? Do you have any way to help me understand why I'm having these nightmares that aren't allowing me to sleep of the abuse I endured as a child and now I'm in my 80s? How do I reconcile that? Because I think I'm dying. I need an answer. I need to talk about that now. I need you to be real. I need you to be genuine about that experience now. Because I'm feeling like arrows are being shot at me. And I want to believe that they're flowers, and I think that they're flowers, but this real life thing kicks us in the ass. And for those of us who are trying to understand that, it's pretty good for us to talk to each other more about that.
That's why, to go back to your theme of ritual, I think that's important, because ritual is a way to sometimes step back from the stresses and other demands of life that push us away from enlightenment and to come to something more simple and to get back in touch with that.
Yeah. Or for me, it's to step into that.
Yeah.
It's to create it. It's to establish it It's to call it out. You know, it's to step into our lives. It's not stepping away. You know, I mean, look at people live in cities and they get noise and they get transportation problems and they get pipes freezing and stuff. You know, like, we've got it pretty good here. You know, like, I've got it really good, you know? How can I not want to share that? For the people who need to get away from the noise and that step back, how can I not
What
share
a great
that?
place you have here to do that. It's a retreat of sorts.
Or for the people who are right in the midst of trying to decide if they want to survive or not, if they're dealing with cancer and they're not, am I going to go on chemo or not? If you've just lost somebody you love and you're trying to decide how to deal with that grief, you might want to step into that experience. You may not want to go on a retreat to step away from it. Your way to enlightenment is stepping into that. Let's go! We don't have enough options for people to step into that. I need more options to step into that. I need to create more options for you to step into that. Because we need more of that.
Follow your own path and wait for other people to step.
I agree. And yet, I have people
Well, you're trying to
running
reach out
away.
And
Running away from the things that they want. Elliot, I'm left to this, man. I have known so many creative, intelligent, and caring people, and I have to do this. I have to do this so that hopefully somebody in the future will watch this and go, oh yeah, that was interesting. Like, I might have something to say. I'm building this as a page in a book, you know? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that I'm left to this.
You have this great frustration that you have yourself and your property, these great resources, and they're not being used.
The lessons that I've learned, the things that I know in my body.
Well, you keep on stacking what you're offering the world to a point in which you get to a point in which somebody can't refuse it. I mean, it's similar to appropriating a mate or business transaction. I mean, at some point, like, what one offers, like, gets to a point in which somebody can't walk by without stopping.
Right.
I mean,
You
just gotta keep on.
You have to market this in its own bizarre way. I mean, as much as marketing has a bad connotation.
And I appreciate and I agree with all of that. But see, that's what this is. It's not a marketing. This isn't about making money. This isn't.
No, not for money.
This
But to
isn't-
market it to get people to take interest in it, whether you have any remuneration or whatever it may bring to you.
Right.
It's to convey it, to communicate it out to people, because most people aren't understanding and appreciating the resources that are here, whether it's you or your property or Alaska or Fairbanks, however you want to characterize it.
And so that exact case that I have run out of options to communicate that, so that I've had to stage this as some way to re-inspire, to re-engage, to challenge the universe in another way. And you know, all due respect to anybody who views this, I have faced my gods. Like this isn't about ego anymore, and this isn't about. I'm trying to stay alive long enough, and for those of you that have any fucking interest or care, and I have gotten such incredible amounts of support from people in ways that, you know, like you and your ceremonies, you know, you didn't know, you're just being you. Other people, you know, somebody will have sent me $1,000, and it's like, well, that's really handy right now. You know, it helps take care of some things. And I've had incredible amounts of support. And so I'm making myself accountable for saying it still hasn't been enough, and that we still need to do better. And that the people who know better, Elliot, you don't need to do anything extra for me, or, you know, like, if there's something that I'm doing or saying that you see how you can have fun with it and that it helps your life, then I expect you to take advantage of it. If you don't, I don't wish you any ill for that. But I have to seize those relationships stronger for myself. And doing this, publicizing this, is no, not publicizing, but making this available as I have in this way to archive it. It's probably the most intimate, selfish part of it is that it allows me the act of saying goodbye. You know, this is.
But the energy you put into this will have its ripple effects, I think. Even
Oh, it does in my body. I'm
right. in your
up
body
right
or
now.
out in the world.
I'm
Even
up
if
right
no
now.
one watches the video, the energy exists. And it's
Absolutely.
coming out of this evening out there in the world.
I'm up right now.
Which is unusual, correct?
This is not at this time
Yeah.
after this.
And you're energetic, yeah.
You know,
This is great.
And so it's a constant. I don't fucking know how to explain it. You know, but what I do know is that there's been too much disrespect. And I have been too quiet too often with people where I needed to have shared more of my voice. And sometimes it was out of politeness, and sometimes it was out of consideration, and sometimes it was because I had other things to learn. You're a part of a national organization, and you go and you learn from all these people who are all smart and have all these backgrounds and all these experiences and everything else. And you could say something that might change something that they're trying to do, but they're not going to make any changes. But you learn a lot, so maybe that's why you're there instead of trying to change things. Thing is, I've thrown my hat in the ring. I've been a part of stuff. I've never shied away, ever. And apparently, it's not good enough. And I have to step the game up somehow. And that starts with this. What is that going to mean? Hell, I didn't.
Time will tell.
I don't always know what that is.
Speaking of time, I should get back to.
But now it's documented.
Yes.
Now it's set. You know, and there's so much. Oh, I do. Yeah, there's so many details. I thought it was just I was gonna just run through a bunch of stories.
Well, free form. It's worked out great. Anyway, I'm going to take off, Ramey. So
Okay.
Elliot can stay here or not.
Yeah.
But
I gotta
anyway,
at least go to the
happy
bathroom.
birthday, my friend. Many, many
Thank you.
more. Glad to be a part of this. Let's stay in touch and see you soon. Elliot, nice to meet you. You look familiar, like I may have met you before, but
Well, we've definitely met now. So
yes. Okay. All right. We'll see you around.
Yeah. I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick. So. I'll be
Okay. Well, I think I'm gonna wind it down here a little bit. Thanks, RJ.
You're welcome, Ramey. Happy trails.
Okay. I think there's probably a few more biographical stories that I would have liked to have some kind of document, but I know how those will play out. It's impossible to get everything in. I can't think of anyone that I wish any harm to. There's an intensity and beauty to all of our lives and our experiences.
I love dearly what you have done for your own. Perhaps it hasn't aligned very well with the choices that I've needed to make, but it doesn't mean I don't value and love your choices. I feel like the documentation of this tonight, whatever it became, whatever it becomes, oh boy. It's real. I'm sorry if you have ever thought that I've meant anything negative. I haven't. And if you can't trust my words, then I wish you the best. And if you can't trust my actions, then I wish you the best. But there has been a profound distaste of the disrespect that we've shown life. And it has sat heavy on my tongue. And my body in this world today says that we need more. And I hope to make that possible for myself, but also to share it with you. So, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? All right. Well, happy spring. Thank you for joining me for dinner. And I hope, I wish us all well. I hope you're the best.